Chapter 2573. Money doesn't mean you can buy shares, Chen Zhao said calmly. At the end of the day, Denver was just working for him. So, Chen Zhao didn't have to give Denver face. Mr. Chen, I know a friend, a very rich friend. And? Chen Zhao asked, unconcerned. There were countless rich people in the world. That person also wants to buy shares. What does that have to do with you buying shares? I know where his bottom line is. Denver, make it clear. I don't like secretive conversations. I want to buy 2% of the shares for 1% and $500 million, Denver said. In exchange, I'll tell you what his bottom line is. Like I said, not everyone is qualified to buy it. There are many rich people contacting Alex, and I don't think your friend is the richest. It was time to split the cake. The people who could buy shares were either people close to Chen Zhao or people with power. For example, people who could cause trouble for the project. Amira was one of them. Chen Zhao had pulled her in from the start not only because they knew each other, but also because of her family's power. If there was any trouble in the future, Amira and her family would definitely intervene out of consideration for their own interests. Mr. Chen, maybe I don't have the right, but that person definitely does. Tell me who he is. Cruise King Jane Fankel. Chen Zhao was unfamiliar with the name, or rather, he had never heard of it before. However, Alex was right beside him. Covering the phone, Chen Zhao asked, Do you know the Cruise King Jane Fankel? I know. The initiator of the biggest merger in the last century is Jane Fankel, who swallowed up the former cruise line giant. She is currently at the helm of the world's largest cruise line, Caribbean Empire Cruise Line. Caribbean Empire Cruise Line owns 28 top-class cruise ships, including 6 of the world's top 10 cruise ships. The deep blue of the ocean owned by the company is the largest and most luxurious cruise ship in the world. Mr. Chen, if I were you, I definitely wouldn't reject Jane Fankel's shares, Denver said. Denver said, You should know how many excellent passengers each cruise ship can bring to you. Chen Zhao didn't deny it. In fact, he was already tempted. Jane Fankel had the right to buy shares. She's buying shares? Or the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line? It's an individual, but it will soon become the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line, because this company will soon be delisted and become Jane Fankel's personal property. Then what's his bottom line? $2 billion, Denver said. Chen Zhao froze. Wasn't the price too high? How could Jane Fankel come up with so much money? Are you sure you didn't report it wrong? Even Chen Zhao himself didn't dare to value Mysterious Island, which still had nothing, at $200 billion. The other party actually dared to directly give $2 billion for 1% of the shares. It was like a sunrise industry, no matter how great the future was. No one dared to say how much this industry was worth before it generated any profits. I'm sure I'm right, Denver said. How many shares does Jane Fankel plan to buy? Chen Zhao asked. 10%. You mean, he's going to spend $20 billion to buy 10% of the Mysterious Island's shares? Are you sure he can afford it? No, it's using the shares of the Caribbean Empire Cruise Company to exchange for shares of equal value. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. Is the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line valued at $200 billion? Yes, Denver answered. Denver replied. Caribbean Empire Cruise Line's operation and profits in recent years have been very impressive. Last year's profit reached $8.9 billion. The average profit of each cruise reached $310 million. Caribbean Empire Cruise Line's routes cover all the deep water ports in the world. At the same time, it also delivers hundreds of thousands of high-quality tourists to major ports. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. I don't think it's a good idea to reveal his bottom line like this. Mr. Chen, do you think I'd say so much without his permission? Did this Jane Fankel send you to test me? Yes. Also, I need to correct your grammar. You should call her madam. Okay. Chen Zhao was a bit awkward. How about you? How many shares do you plan to buy? 2% one. 1 billion US dollars, Denver said. This was also the maximum amount of shares he could buy. He obviously couldn't compare to Jane Fankel. Sure. But I need to contact Jane Fankel first before I can trade with you. Of course. You can set the time. After ending the call with Denver, Chen Zhao turned to Alex. Your job's here. Chen, I'm actually your lawyer, not a business consultant. I don't even want to charge you interest. Can't you do me a small favor? Fine. Tell me about the situation first. Chen Zhao told her what he'd heard from Denver. You want to facilitate this share swap? Yes. In the short term, you'll benefit from this share swap, but in the long term, you won't. How many years will it take for Mysterious Island to be valued at $200 billion? Although the Caribbean Empire cruise line is very profitable, it has reached its limit. Moreover, the competition in the cruise industry is very fierce. If they can't find a new source of customers and a deep-water port, they will go downhill. What Jane Fankel is interested in is the new source of customers on the mystical island. Although her cruise line can bring a lot of tourists, she can also get more customers. Moreover, the mystical island doesn't lack the cooperation of cruise lines. Even without the Caribbean Empire cruise line, there will be other cruise lines trying to get in front of us. You don't have to worry about whether there will be a cruise line willing to dock. So I'm losing money in this deal? There's no such thing as profit or loss in business. I'm just stating our current position. We don't need them, but they definitely can't do without us. They should be the ones who are anxious. You can ask for more. It looks like we have the upper hand, but with their current valuation, I don't think they'll be willing to pay more than a 1:1 ratio. I don't think we can increase the share swap ratio, but we can make them pay more. How much more do you think they'll pay? If it's a few $100 million, forget it. What if it's $5 billion? Are you sure you can do it? Chen Zhao couldn't believe it. He felt that Alex was asking for too much. In fact, Chen Zhao even felt that the prices he'd given his friends were like cabbages. Chapter 2574. The news outside was still everywhere. But Chen Zhao wasn't affected at all, as if it had nothing to do with him. This was the benefit of being a non-listed company. So what if someone found out his identity? He still had to follow the basic rules of the game. If someone purposely published all of his information in order to force Chen Zhao could have all the nude photos of his family appear in the magazine. Therefore, when facing a super-rich person, no one would easily cross the bottom line. Once the bottom line was crossed, it would become a game without a bottom line. It was like a nuclear weapon. When everyone could use it, no one dared to use it. Then Chen Zhao, Stephen, Rasfa, Zola, Amira, Risfar, and Dell recommended representatives to form a team. Chen Zhao's representative was, of course, Alex. They all represented their own interests. At the same time, the team was in charge of planning the promotion and development of Mysterious Island. They were also in charge of contacting the outside world, such as service companies, hotels, shopping malls, luxury stores, supermarkets, and so on. Even the Disney Corporation tried to contact them. But for the amusement park project, everyone wanted to open it themselves. It would be completely different from other amusement parks. Chen Zhao didn't need to worry about these trivial matters. Most of the time, he only needed to sign. Fuck, all the police in New York are looking for us. Fidek is dead too, Rock is dead too, and Nanier is dead too. Her head was cut in half by a bullet. Only the three of us are left now. There were 4 people hiding in the small house in the woods. They had just robbed a bank and got $300,000, and they managed to get away. But the price was that 3 of their friends had died. And because in the course of the robbery, they shot 4 police officers. All the police in New York were looking for them like crazy. They couldn't move an inch now, even though they had $300,000. But they didn't even dare to go out of the woods. Knock, knock, just then, slow footsteps came from outside. It was the sound of thick-soled shoes stepping on wooden boards. However, the footsteps sounded a little strange. The 4 people in the house immediately stood up and glanced at each other. They raised their weapons at the same time. Pavel, you're being followed? No. How could that be? Popper immediately shook his head. It definitely wasn't me. At this moment, Sedmer was behind the door with his shotgun. The other 3 also found cover. Some hid behind the fireplace, while others put down the table and hid behind it. Creak, the door of the wooden house was slowly pushed open. A familiar figure appeared in front of everyone. However, Sedmar, who was hiding behind the door, did not notice who it was. He smashed the back of the man's head with the butt of his gun. The man staggered a few steps, but did not fall to the ground. Don't move! Sedmar shouted. Stop! 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 She's Nanir! Powell shouted. At this moment, Sedmar also stopped and stared at the familiar figure in disbelief. Nanir stood there, her body dripping with blood, her hair disheveled. There was a very obvious gap in her head. However, from the gap in the skull, what he saw wasn't brain juice, but a piece of gray flesh. At first, they wanted to protect Nanir, but now they all backed away. A human brain was definitely not like that. Nanir twisted her neck. Her every movement gave everyone goosebumps. Even if they were all extremely vicious and evil people. But when faced with Nanir's abnormal behavior, they all shuddered. My friends, is this how you treat your friend, your boss? Nanir said in a low voice. Even though it was just her voice, it was enough to make people shudder. You're not Nanir. Who are you? Or, what are you? Popper asked in a low voice. The pistol in his hand was still raised. I'm Nanir. Is there a problem with that? No, Nanir is a human, you're not, ha! I'm the one who gathered you and united you. As for the past Nanir, you don't need to know her. You don't need to know her. Nanir reached out and brushed her messy hair back. At the same time, she covered the hole in her skull. I fought alone outside and killed all the policemen, but you left me behind. This makes me very angry. Only then did everyone notice that Nanir was covered in blood. There were at least 30 police officers and a dozen police cars chasing them. All by her. Just then, Nanir reached out and pulled out a bullet from the gun in her stomach. Then her arms, chest, thighs, and back. She pulled out bullets one by one. Are you still going to point your guns at me? Popper and the others exchanged glances and finally lowered their guns. Nanir. Boss. Who exactly are you? They could tell that bullets weren't much of a threat to Nanir. They definitely didn't have as much ammo as the 30 police officers. Since Nanir could kill 30 police officers, she could probably kill a few of them too. It would be very unwise to point their guns at him now. Anyway, you're my subordinates. As long as you don't betray me, I won't abandon you, Nanir said calmly. Now can someone get me some food? I need to replenish my energy. If you don't want me to eat you, you better go and prepare it now. Okay, I'm kidding. I don't eat humans, at least not under normal circumstances. My digestive system is still a human's digestive system. I have an extreme rejection for flesh and blood of my own kind. Everyone shuddered at the sight of it. They hurriedly took out the food and watched as Nanir stuffed the food into her mouth with both hands. Boss, what should we do next? The police outside are probably searching for us like crazy. Leave, of course. I killed so many police officers. I'm sure the government will send the army to deal with us. I don't want to face a fully armed army. But how do we leave here? Slap. Just then, Nanir threw down a few bloody human faces. Everyone shuddered and looked at Nanir in fear. They didn't understand Nanir's intentions. Change your face and they won't be able to find us. Chapter 2575. How do we use it? It's a little complicated, but believe me, you'll like the change. Everyone's expression was not good. After all, Nanir's eyes were very evil. I don't think we need this thing. Perwill's expression was a little fearful. He did not know what Nanir was going to do. But he instinctively felt that what Nanier was going to do was definitely not good. At this moment, the bloody human faces began to wriggle. If one looked closely, they would see many small wriggling tentacles at the edge of the human skin. The process is painful, but you'll also get a new identity. What if I don't want it? Boss, will you kill me? Everyone looked at Perwill, waiting for Nanier's answer. No, but I won't save you either, Nanier said. At most I'll just hide here. The police can't always put me on the wanted list. The police will find this place soon, Nanier said calmly. Perwill's expression changed. Just then, Jeffries picked up a human skin. The human skin was still squirming in his hand. How do I use this? Just put it on your face. After Jeffries put the human skin on his face, the tentacles easily pierced into his skin. Jeffries screamed. Jeffries, what's wrong? No. I'm fine. Jeffries waved his hand. Everyone could see that the skin on that person's face was constantly straightening and smoothing out the originally unflattened skin. Soon, Jeffries became a different person. From his body shape to his appearance, even his hair color had changed. Jeffries was originally a short, brown-haired man less than 1.7 meters tall. But now, he looked at least 1.8 meters tall. His body was burly and his hair had turned black and yellow. Jeffries? Everyone could not believe that the man in front of them was Jeffries. This was not just a change of face, it was a complete rebirth. Phew, this feels so good. I feel full of power. In the end, everyone chose the human skin. No one sensed anything strange. Now, no one knows our past identities, Nanier said with satisfaction. Everyone looked at Nanier because she hadn't changed. But at that moment, Nanier's face squirmed and quickly changed into another face. Where are we going now? Let's go to a place that we can enjoy. $300,000 is enough for us to enjoy unprecedented happiness, Nanier said. However, Nanier and her men soon found out. $300,000 was really not a lot. Especially in a place like Los Angeles. $300,000 was only enough for them to spend 3 days in Los Angeles. 3 days later, they became paupers. Everyone looked at each other. Boss, how much money do we have? I don't have a penny left. My card has been maxed out. Nanier was also confused. In her memory, $300,000 was a lot. It was a huge sum of money. But why? It seems that I can only go back to my old profession, Nanier said calmly. If we're going to rob something this time, we'll rob a big bank. Just one robbery is enough for us to live comfortably for the rest of our lives, Popwell said. But we have no weapons. Last time they flew from New York to Los Angeles, they naturally lost all their weapons. Now, they didn't even have a single bullet. Let's rob a gun store first. It was easy for them to rob a gun store. Especially at night for a group of people who could rob a bank. The anti-theft measures of the gun store were really not enough. In fact, they just needed to cut off the power of the gun store. It was almost like a girl who had her legs ripped off. It was very easy for these vicious bandits to obtain a large amount of firearms. And many of them were fully automatic weapons. Popwell, have you found the target? Boss, there are too many banks in Los Angeles, and almost all of them are heavily guarded. It won't be easy to get them. Bullshit. Our firepower is so strong. I don't think any bank's defenses can stop our firepower, Nanier said disdainfully. Everyone was speechless. Their firepower was indeed strong. But the key problem was that they couldn't really start a massacre. They were bank robbers, not rebels. Boss, don't worry. It's not like there aren't any. It's hard to find one in Los Angeles, but the ones slightly further away might not be as heavily guarded as the ones in the city. Popwell was very afraid. Their boss wasn't human. I don't want to wait too long. Not long. At most 3 days. 3 days is too long. I don't want to pick up food from the trash. I want top-quality beef and exquisite pastries. Nanir was very unhappy. Forget it. It's useless to count on you. Looks like I'll have to do it myself. Boss, what are you doing? Building an army, Nanir said calmly. Building an army? Everyone was dumbfounded. How? Go to Africa and hire black people? No need for that, Nanir said disapprovingly. Boss, what exactly do we do? It's simple, Nanir said casually. You don't have to do anything. Nanir tapped her temples with 2 fingers. An invisible and untouchable psychic energy spread out. Huh! Qin Zhao was taking a bath in the lake. Suddenly, he felt an unfamiliar spiritual power attack him. This mental power was unfamiliar, but Qin Zhao was very familiar with its methods. Wasn't this the unusual god's method? It had been used for hundreds of years. Didn't the unusual god have any other methods? For example, something more substantial. Mortal, submit to me. I will give you wealth, power, and eternal life. Qin Zhao suddenly opened his eyes. Go away! At the same time, Nanir, who was in a corner of Los Angeles, suddenly opened her eyes. Nanir suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Boss! What's wrong? Damn it! There's a terrifying guy here. Nanir remembered this aura. When she escaped from Demon Island, she remembered that the owner of this aura had torn her kind apart one by one. She had also escaped during the chaos. But Nanir was very familiar with this aura. Chapter 2576. Nanir rushed out of the house. The others quickly followed. Although they didn't know what had happened, they felt that something terrible had happened. Taos, which direction is the wind now? Boss! What's wrong? What happened? Which direction is the wind now? The wind is southeast. Nanir stretched out her hand and felt the breeze. Then he's in that direction. Nanir's spiritual power spread out, but she couldn't completely control the direction. It could only spread with the wind. Basically, as long as she knew the direction, she would know the general direction of the aura. Let's leave Los Angeles, Nanir said. It was too dangerous here. To be precise, that person was too dangerous. What? We didn't succeed, did we? Succeed? If we stay here, we'll only lose our lives. Nanir wasn't afraid of the police. For her, it would just take a little more time to kill them. She wasn't afraid of the army either, as long as it was in a densely populated area. No matter how powerful the army was, they couldn't release it in a densely populated area. Therefore, Nanir had been pursuing the idea of hiding in the city. But that was when there were no strong people of the same level nearby. But now, not only were there people nearby, but they were also nightmarish. If it was someone of the same level, or just a little stronger, Nanir felt that she could rely on the wisdom and means she inherited from her predecessors. It was definitely more than enough to deal with them. But the problem now was that the person was not strong at all. Nanir didn't think that the so-called conspiracy and tricks would work on that person. Boss, what happened? We don't have a penny now. Where can we go? Get a car, Nanir said. Now, immediately, right now. But why? There's someone more terrifying than me here. Everyone looked at each other. They knew who Nanir was. To be precise, they didn't know what kind of terrifying existence Nanir was. But one thing was certain. Nanir was terrifying. Because they had seen the news when they fled from New York to Los Angeles. More than 30 New York police officers were killed by Nanir alone. She was simply a devil from hell. And this was just a little bit of her power. It was definitely not her full strength. But there was someone here who could make her so afraid. This cast a shadow over everyone's hearts. Boss, Los Angeles is big. It shouldn't be that easy to find us. You don't know how terrifying that person is. Several hundred of my clansmen were torn apart by him. He's the true fiend. There was extreme panic in Nanir's eyes. Besides, if he gets close to me, I won't be able to sense him at all. But if I get within a certain range of him, he will sense me. How big do you think Los Angeles is? When I used my spirit magic just now, he already sensed it. Maybe he's searching for me now. Boss, we have guns. With our firepower, we can hold out for 20 minutes even against all the police in Los Angeles. Unless you blow him up with a nuclear warhead, you won't be able to kill him. For him, killing me is no different from killing an ant. Everyone was speechless. Nuclear warhead? What a joke! They couldn't even get their hands on unconventional weapons, let alone nuclear warheads. Everyone was finally convinced by Nan and Ayer. In fact, even if they didn't agree, Nan would still leave by herself. In any case, she would not stay here. The psychological pressure was too great. They got a car on the street and left the city that night. However, the car ran out of gas on the way. They had no choice but to rob another gas station. In the morning, Nan and Ayer saw Los Angeles and felt a lot less stressed. Well, don't be afraid when we're out of the city. Let's find a place to eat first. Boss, let's hurry up. It's not too far from Los Angeles. No, I'm hungry, Nan and I said. Although Nan and Ayer was possessed by the god of otherworldlings, she was not an ordinary god of otherworldlings. She fed on desire, but she liked human food even more. She also liked everything that humans enjoyed. She gathered Powell and the others because they exuded an aura of desire. They were the most lustful among humans. But she was also dominated by desire. Boss, let's go back. It's not far from Los Angeles. If you don't let me eat, I'll eat you, Nan and I said coldly. But we don't have money. Didn't you just rob more than $100 at the gas station? Everyone was helpless and could only compromise. However, their abnormal behavior still attracted the attention of the shop assistant. Fortunately, it was still early. There were no other customers in the store except the shop assistant. They knocked the shop assistant out. This saved them a lot of trouble. Under the urging of the crowd, Nan and Ayer was only half full. They did not dare to be too ostentatious during the day. After all, it would be quite troublesome if they were chased by the police during the day. Unless they once again escaped into the deep mountains and forests. But soon Nan and Ayer made trouble again. Nan and Ayer did not know how to control herself at all. When they passed by a shopping street, Nan and Ayer wanted to get out of the car and rob the luxury store when she saw the name brands. Finally, they managed to stop Nan and Ayer from escaping. Not only did Nan and I have the same desire as a woman, but she also expanded it. She had unlimited and unrestrained desire. Except for Nan and I, they were not interested in luxury goods. At least, they now felt that eating was more valuable than robbing. I don't care. I want to sleep on a branded bag. I want to have a sumptuous meal in front of me. I want to live in the best house. I want the sun, I want the beach. Nan and I made trouble again. Everyone looked at Nan and I. They knew that she was difficult to please. But they had money before, so they did not feel that it was unacceptable. But now, they had no money at all. $100 was not even enough for a meal. Just when everyone was having a headache, Nan and I suddenly stopped making trouble. Everyone was surprised. Why did Nan and I's tantrum end so quickly? That's a bank, Nan and I said, looking across the road. Yes. Powell nodded. But when he suddenly saw the name of the bank, he suddenly shivered. Boss, that's Citibank. We can't afford to offend them. Chapter 2577. Qin Zhao had a rare free time these 2 days. When he was free, he would go to Cliff and Amber's new kindergarten to check on the progress. Right now, Qin Zhao was returning from the supermarket with the kids. Just then, his phone rang. It was Yamila on the phone. Qin, something happened. What can happen? Did someone rob your bank? How do you know? Wait. You didn't do it, did you? Huh? Qin Zhao was dumbfounded. He was just talking. If he didn't talk every day, he would feel uncomfortable all over. He didn't expect to run into trouble. You were really robbed? Yes. Wait, you didn't suspect me from the start, did you? What did I do that made you suspect me? I didn't suspect you. You said it yourself? But even if you were robbed, you shouldn't have called me, right? I'm not in charge of this kind of criminal case. It's your gold that's being robbed, said Amira. You're not suspecting me just because of that, right? I said I didn't suspect you, but what? Our bank didn't lose a single cent. Why? Didn't you say that the gold I sold you was robbed? It was indeed robbed, but our bank didn't even have time to hand over the money. The truck you used to transport the gold was still parked at the entrance, and the robber didn't manage to rob our bank of the money. In the process of escaping, he drove away with the truck. Their conversation suddenly fell into silence. The normal transaction process was to transport the gold to the bank. Then, the bank would receive it, count it, and transfer the money to complete the final transaction. If the gold was robbed in the bank, it had nothing to do with Chen Zhao. But now, the gold was robbed at the door before it even entered the bank. Chen Zhao felt stifled. It wasn't much. It was only 35 tons of gold. It was close to $1. 2 billion. Indeed, it wasn't much for Chen Zhao. But his things had been robbed. How could he be happy? I'll go right now, Chen Zhao said. Okay. Half an hour later, Chen Zhao arrived at the bank. Andrews was waiting for him at the door. Mr. Chen, I'm sorry. Although this had almost nothing to do with him. But he still had to make his stance clear. After all, he was Chen Zhao's representative. He was in charge of the bank's inventory, so he watched from the side. It's none of your business. Take me to Amira first, Chen Zhao said. Soon, Chen Zhao saw Amira. What's the specific situation? Look at the surveillance. Chen Zhao had some complaints about Amira. After all, the gold was lost in front of her house. Even if this had nothing to do with her, it didn't stop Chen Zhao from blaming Amira. Amira showed Chen Zhao the surveillance footage. A few people wearing animal masks rushed into the bank. One of the robbers, who was obviously a female, used an unknown technique. The bank's customers and lobby staff suddenly acted like they were possessed and began to help the robbers. But the robbers couldn't open the backstage door. After trying for a minute, the robbers left decisively. Then, the customers and employees who were controlled fainted on the ground. Then Amira switched to the outside of the bank. A large truck stopped right in front of the gate. Moreover, the truck stopped just as the robbers entered the bank. Then the robbers didn't care anymore. They kicked the original driver out of the car and drove the truck away in a hurry. Chen Zhao had to admit that he was very unlucky. Very, very unlucky. You didn't find the truck? Chen Zhao asked. With so much gold and such a big truck, it should be very eye-catching. Plus, it's not easy for them to change vehicles in the city. We couldn't find it. We contacted the municipal government and asked for the surveillance footage of all the intersections, but the truck seemed to be invisible. It suddenly disappeared on a straight road. Chen Zhao frowned and disappeared on a straight road. Since the surveillance couldn't find it, it was physical invisibility. In other words, it was true invisibility. If it was only mental hypnosis, it could fool people's eyes, but it couldn't fool the surveillance footage. Chen Zhao took a deep breath. Amira glanced at Chen Zhao. She could see the anger that was about to explode in Chen Zhao's eyes. The truck reached the end of the road. In front of it was a barren desert. Hot wind blew against their faces. Boss, there's someone behind us. I knew. Let's stop here, Nanier said disapprovingly. Her powerful mental strength had already discovered that there were two people's mental strengths in the rear compartment. However, both of them were in a state of extreme panic. Nanier walked to the truck and nodded at Powell and Sidemar. The two immediately opened the door of the truck. Just then, there were loud gunshots. The two guards protecting the gold fired without hesitation. They were trapped in the truck, but there were surveillance cameras in the truck. They knew what was happening outside. Nanier's body was instantly riddled with holes. But she just wouldn't fall. Suddenly, a terrifying light shot out of Nanier's eyes. Ah! Ah! With two screams, the two guards fell to the ground, covering their heads. Nanir sneered. Two regular people actually dared to fight her head-on. They really didn't know what death was. Boss! Boss, what are you screaming for? Nanir looked at Powell, annoyed. Powell's voice was trembling as he pointed at the inside of the container. Although the truck was closed, it was bright inside. When Nanir raised her head and looked in the direction of Powell's finger, she almost couldn't close her mouth. The golden light almost blinded her eyes. Ah! The three people in front of the truck, including Nanir, screamed. The people in front heard the screams and came over. Then they also joined in the screaming. Gold. Endless gold. Nanir finally controlled her emotions. She swallowed her saliva. Gold. That was gold. Even though Nanir was a god of otherworldlings. But she also knew what gold represented. Wealth. It was endless wealth. Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha! Nanir suddenly laughed wildly. She would retire after this job. That's what she meant. Nanir rushed up, grabbed the 2 gold bricks, and kissed them. Boss, there is a lot of gold, but how do we exchange it for cash? This? Nanir narrowed her eyes, her gaze flickering. She attached herself to this body and also obtained all the memories of the previous owner. She knew that the gold could not be used directly as money. Chapter 2578. The gold robbers were in a dilemma about how to turn the gold into cash. Nanir was lost in thought. No one knew what she was thinking. Boss, even if we have unparalleled treasures, we have no way to turn them into cash. What should we do? It's not completely impossible, Nanir said with twinkling eyes. Boss, do you have a way? I happen to know that there are several of our kind nearby. They formed a cult, Nanir said. Close the container and let's go in another direction. Although the truck changed direction, it was getting more and more desolate. After a few hours of driving, the truck arrived at a canyon. Go to the left, Nanir instructed. The truck drove off the highway and onto a dirt road. As the truck drove past, it raised a cloud of dust. The truck drove until it came to a very large dirt mound. Boss, there's no road ahead. Nanir got out of the truck and put her fingers on her temples. Come out, it's a road to the unknown. Just then, a gate appeared on the edge of the dirt mound. It was a rusty bronze gate, exuding a puzzling aura. Nanir raised her arm and shouted. I am Fiends, and I come as a member of the same clan. Hee hee. The bronze gate slowly opened. It was just a thin surface. But behind the bronze gate was an unreachable abyss. Nanir waved her hand. Drive in. Powell and the others who were driving the truck were panicking at the moment. This was because there was nothing behind the bronze door. There was nothing at all. Were they sure they wouldn't die if they drove in? But under Nanir's urging, Powell still drove the truck in. Then Nanir followed and entered the bronze gate. When Powell turned on the headlights, he found that the truck was parked in a huge and dark cave. Just then, they saw Nanir's feet suddenly leave the ground, and she floated up. Hiss, although they knew that their boss was not a human. But when they saw Nanir get rid of the gravity and float up, they still felt a chill. Nanir's body also emitted a faint light. Although it was not very strong, it could illuminate a radius of about 15 meters. Get out, Nanir said. They got out and continued to walk forward. Not long after, they heard heavy breathing in front of them. Suddenly, a huge light source appeared on the wall in front of them. It was a large balloon that looked like it had dried up. There were many lumps of flesh on the shriveled balloon. There were also 2 huge tentacles hanging on the ground. The thing that looked like a deflated balloon in everyone's eyes was actually a living thing. Its body glowed with green light. Everyone was shocked when they saw the true face of this thing. So big. What the hell is this? Aliens? Fiends, what are you doing here? Hello, Elder Cage. Nanir bowed respectfully and said, I heard that you, Elder Raysar and Elder Kalen Masa have formed the Three Gods sect and intend to spread the doctrine among humans. So I want to make a deal with you. Suddenly, Puel saw another yellow light source on his left. It was also a giant balloon. It didn't look as big as Elder Cage, but it was fuller and rounder. There were countless tentacles all over its body, unlike Elder Cage, who only had 2 thick tentacles. Just then, another balloon appeared on the right. It was glowing red and about the same size as the second meatball. It didn't have tentacles, but there were many sarcomas on its body. Fiends, you? Do you want to make a deal with us? Do you know what you're talking about? The yellow light source rumbled. Fiends, have you forgotten who we are? Or has your generation forgotten who we are? Nanir's face showed a hint of mockery. But she quickly covered it up. Of course, she didn't forget that these 3 elders could be considered her brothers, because they were all hatched from eggs laid by their mothers. At the same time, they could be said to be the first rulers of the Devil Prison. They were hatched from the first batch of eggs laid by their mothers. Then, over the course of 2,000 years, they obtained unparalleled authority in the demon prison, which could not be considered to be very large. Perhaps the demons who raised them let them do as they pleased. They allowed Cage, Quillen Massa, and Ray Sar, the 3 otherworldly gods, to devour their own kind. After devouring countless brothers and sisters and growing for 2,000 years, they also grasped unparalleled power. This was something the otherworldly gods couldn't compare to. It could be said that in the Devil Prison, other than their mothers, all otherworldly gods were food to them. Once an otherworldly god that was slightly close to their power appeared, they would devour it. In the Devil Prison, all the otherworldly gods submitted to their terrifying rule. But in the end, they were just dogs raised by the demons. Dogs! Did they need to be respected? Only Nanir didn't need to worry. Because she was the mother, the new generation's mother. If it was in the Devil Prison, the old mother would directly order the otherworldly gods to kill her. But the situation now was different. Although she didn't replace the old mother, she escaped from the Devil Prison. She was also out of the old mother's control. Nanir's power might not be strong. To be precise, she was very weak among the otherworldly gods. But as a mother, she still had a special domain. This domain was hers when she was born. She could be strong, but she could also be weak. Because this domain was only effective against the otherworldly gods. Inviolable. As long as she was in this domain, no otherworldly god could hurt her. They were not even allowed to attack her. Because of this, Nanir dared to meet the 3 elders of the otherworldly gods. She was the only one who could attack others, and no one could attack her. Don't you want to hear the contents of my deal? Elders. Hee. We never trade, we only rob. Quillen Massa said indifferently. Nanir's expression changed slightly, but she still said calmly, This deal is almost free for you. Okay, I'll give you a chance to speak, Cage said. I brought a lot of gold, and you will need a lot of money to establish a church. So I want to ask Elder Cage to turn this gold into cash. But you can't remove the domain power within 3 days. Chapter 2579. In Inferno, only Cage, Kalen Massa, and Ray Sal had mastered the power of the realm. Although they seemed invincible, in fact, they were high-level ingredients raised by the demons. Of course, they had already escaped. As long as they were not caught by the demons, they would be completely unrestrained. Cage's realm was called the realm of illusion. It could turn real objects into illusions, and fake objects into reality. For example, the gold that Nanir brought this time. Cage could turn the gold into dollars, but it could only exist in the realm. Once it was out of the realm, the illusion would be ineffective. Therefore, Cage needed to use his magic to maintain the realm. Nanir's conditions were simple. She would give the gold to Cage, Kalen Massa, and Ray Sal, and Cage would help them maintain the illusion for 3 days. As long as they deposited the money in the bank, it would be none of Cage's business whether he cancelled the realm or not. Since Cage, Kalen Massa, and Ray Sal had founded the 3 God sect, they would definitely need a lot of money. What they were doing now was basically taking advantage of the situation. They promised the believers endless wealth, power, and strength. In fact, they did not have this ability. At least for the time being, they could not fulfill those promises with their poor assets. To Cage, Nanir's request was as easy as lifting a finger. Therefore, Nanir felt that there should be no obstacles to their deal. At this time, Cage suddenly raised his tentacles and slapped Nanir heavily. However, the tentacles did not hit Nanir, but the side of her. Fiends, I want the gold, but I don't agree to your conditions. Why? This is not difficult for you. Although it's not difficult, I can't use my realm for 3 days. Nanir obviously underestimated Cage's shamelessness and despicability. She thought that she was not afraid of the 3 gods. However, she completely ignored the fact that the 3 gods did not care about the terms of the deal. Although they could not attack her, it did not prevent them from leaving the big truck. And Nanir could not stop it at all. Nanir was unhappy that she underestimated the shamelessness of the 3 gods and overestimated her own ability. She had no bargaining chips in front of them. The so-called bargaining chip was when they had the same level of strength. Although Nanir had the ability to attack them, they couldn't fight back. But the problem was that even if Cage, Kalen Masa, and Raisal, the 3 otherworldling gods, stood still and let her hit them, she would not be able to hurt them. Therefore, this deal was completely untenable. One day, Nanir would grow to the point where she could hurt them. He didn't need to be too powerful. He just needed to be able to cause a certain amount of damage. That was when they gave in. However, to wait for that day, it might take a few 100 years, or even 1,000 years. But before this, Nanir was not qualified to talk to them at all. You can scram now. Nanir clenched her fists and glared at Cage, Kalen, Masa, and Raisal. It was as if he wanted to remember their faces. Let's go. You can leave, but your subordinates can't. We don't have much food left, and they can serve as our food reserves. Nanir's eyes were instantly filled with anger. Popper and the others were even more panic-stricken. Do you 3 old things really intend to shed all pretense of cordiality? Haha. Little thing, your threat is meaningless to us. Nanir suddenly put up a spiritual barrier of nearly 10 meters and said to her subordinates behind her, "Hurry up and run." Popper and the others hesitated for a moment, then turned and ran. Kalen Massa's body emitted a hot red light. The heat was unbearable for Nanir. Although they couldn't directly attack Nanir, it didn't mean that they were completely helpless. Nanir couldn't avoid this kind of area attack. In other words, as long as they didn't directly attack Nanir, it would be fine. But Nanir was still struggling. The scorching heat was almost scorching her skin. She watched as her subordinates ran out of the cave one by one. Nanir glared at the 3 otherworldly gods with hatred. You'll pay the price! After saying that, Nanir turned and ran. All of a sudden, an iron cage appeared above Nanir, trapping her in it. Cage looked down at Nanir. Did I allow you to leave? Nanir sneered. Do you think you can stop me from leaving? The next moment, Nanir's body in the cage turned into specks of starlight. Spiritual body! The faces of Cage and the other 2 otherworldly gods couldn't help but sink. Although Nanir was confident that they couldn't hurt her, she had to be vigilant. So from the beginning, she didn't intend to break into the nest of the 3 gods sect alone. Instead, she used a pure spiritual body to transform into her own appearance. If it was someone else's spiritual body, the 3 powerful otherworldly gods would certainly have discovered it. But the target was Nanir, and their spiritual power couldn't directly scan Nanir. Remember my words, I'll make you pay. Popper and the others ran out of the bronze door and saw Nanir appear on the wall. But at this moment, Nanir's body was full of burn marks, and almost half of her hair was burned. They didn't understand why Nanir suddenly appeared in front of them when she was obviously guarding the rear. Boss, how are you? Nanir was very angry, and her face was full of rage. Boss, what should we do now? Revenge! But Popper and the others were full of hesitation. They could see how big the gap between Nanir and the 3 giant meatballs was. They felt that they couldn't fight against the 3 giant meatballs with their strength alone. But at this moment, Nanir didn't care about that at all. She just wanted revenge, revenge on those 3 damned bastards. The more Nanir thought about it, the angrier she got. She couldn't calm down at all. But she knew the terrifying strength of the 3 otherworldly gods. Even if she was given 1,000 years, she wouldn't be a match for them. But her anger at this moment couldn't wait for 1,000 years. She had to take revenge now. Popper and the others all walked in front. They could feel that Nanir's emotions at this moment were like a volcano that was about to erupt, and could be released at any time. They didn't think they could withstand Nanir's outburst. No one dared to persuade Nanir. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 2580. Suddenly, Nanir stopped. Her eyes flickered. Seeing her eyes, everyone felt that she was making a dangerous decision. Yes, she really couldn't beat 3 alien gods. But someone could. The more Nanir thought about it, the more she thought it was a good idea. Let's go back. Qinzhao had been in a bad mood these 2 days. No one would be happy to lose their money. He'd lost $2 billion too. To Qinzhao, this wasn't a huge loss. But it still made him feel terrible. Someone had embarrassed him here. Portia glanced at Qinzhao from afar. She didn't know what had happened. However, something bad must have happened for Qinzhao to have such a long face all day. Portia still avoided Qinzhao voluntarily. She didn't want Qinzhao to use her as a tool to vent. Just then, Qinzhao's phone rang. Human. A woman's voice came from the phone. Who is it? Qinzhao was confused. Was it a prank? Why did she call him human? I don't like this kind of joke. Qinzhao's tone turned cold. Do you think I'm joking with you? I hope you are. Human, do you think I should be afraid of you just because you say that? You should be. Ha! I'm not afraid of you, the woman said. If you're here to provoke me, then you've succeeded. I'm very angry now. Come find me. My subordinates and I have prepared a big gift for you. Qinzhao narrowed his eyes. Challenge? Or a trap? I'll wait for you in the desert north of LA. Normally, Qinzhao would think twice before acting. But right now, he just wanted to find someone or something to vent his anger on. I'll do as you wish. Hurry, drive in that direction, Nanir urged after hanging up. Boss, what do we do now? Perwell asked as he started the car he'd just stolen. They hadn't done anything else in the past 2 days. They'd only been investigating the phone number of the person Nanir needed. Leave the coordinates, of course. Coordinates? What kind of coordinates? You won't understand even if I tell you. Nanir clearly didn't want to explain the complicated spiritual marking to Perwell. The car sped forward, heading in the direction of the mound. The car was very fast. When they reached the hill, Nanir jumped out of the car and opened the bronze door in the same way. Come on, let's get out of here, Nanir said. Boss, are you sure this will work? It'll definitely work. Nanir wasn't very confident, because it looked too obvious. It was clearly a trap. If it were her, she would not fall for it so easily. But just as they were about to leave, a thick tentacle reached out from the bronze door and grabbed their car. Step on the gas. Since you're here, then don't leave. Just then, a huge blue ball of flesh crawled out of the bronze door. Raisal. Nanir picked up the gun and fired at Raisal, who was standing in front of the windshield. Although the spear could not hurt Raisal, it could still cause him pain. But in pain, Raisal swung his tentacles and sent their car flying. Fiends, you still haven't learned your lesson. Raisal's body floated up gently and approached Nanir and Perwell's car. Raisal's attack just now had made the 2 of them suffer quite a bit. Especially Perwell, whose head was already bleeding. Nanir didn't have any injuries. But the car's tumbling made her dizzy. The car was almost the size of a toy car in front of Raisal. Seeing this, Raisal's tentacles were raised high. Seeing this, Perwell's face turned pale with fright. He didn't know if Nanir would die from Raisal's tentacle whip, but he would definitely die. Just when Perwell thought he was going to die, A gust of air whizzed past the car. Then, Razel's huge body was smashed into the mound of earth behind it. Startled, Powell turned to look at Nanier next to him. Nanier crossed her arms in front of her chest and stared at the rearview mirror. Her body was trembling violently. She seemed to have seen something horrifying, or maybe someone. Popper turned his head to look behind him and saw a vague silhouette slowly walking towards them. Chen Zhao walked forward step by step. Spheres kept forming around him. These balls were like dark planets. Each weighed 1,000,000 tons. This was the result of his training these days. It wasn't the best result he'd expected. But it was already quite horrifying. After forming 5 black balls, the number stopped increasing. Qin Zhao had already walked to the car. He glanced indifferently at Nanier and Powell in the car. Just then, Raisal flew out of the huge hole he'd created. "I'm going to kill you!" Raisal roared from his soul. Terrifying spiritual waves exploded from his body. Qin Zhao lifted his right arm and pointed at Raisal. 5 black balls shot out at the same time. Bang, 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 bang. With unstoppable speed and terrifying weight, the black balls pierced through Raisal's ball-like body with a single horizontal shot. 5 holes were left in one go. The black balls didn't stop there. They kept shooting back and forth, again and again. In just a dozen seconds, Raisal was riddled with holes. However, the otherworldly god wasn't so easy to kill. Their bodies were just extensions of their spiritual power, which came from their core hearts. As long as their hearts weren't destroyed, they could regenerate endlessly. As expected, in less than a dozen seconds, Raisal's body reformed again. But now, he didn't want to fight anymore. Because he'd recognized the human in front of him. Qin Zhao pointed again, and the 5 black balls combined into one. Bang, 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 bang. After 5 loud bangs, a 10,000,000-ton black ball was formed. This was the limit of what Qin Zhao could do with his domain. Moreover, it was difficult to even control the trajectory of a 10,000,000-ton black ball. Controlling 5 2,000,000-ton black balls and 1 10,000,000-ton black ball were 2 completely different things. Qin Zhao had the experience of controlling thousands of swords before, so controlling 5 black balls at the same time wasn't a problem at all. But controlling a 10,000,000-ton black ball was a matter of pure strength. He couldn't lift it up. So, Qin Zhao fused the black ball above Raisal's head. Then, under the effect of gravity, it smashed into Raisal's body. Poof! Raisal's body deflated like a deflated balloon. Chapter 2581. Nanier already knew how terrifying Qin Zhao was. But Powell didn't know. He didn't know what was going on either. There was a whooshing sound in the air. Then Rezhel shriveled up as if he'd been punched hundreds of times. Qin Zhao glanced at the shriveled Rezhel and then at the bronze door. Qin Zhao walked toward the bronze door. Nanier looked at Qin Zhao's back. After Qin Zhao entered the bronze door, Nanier jumped out of the car. She charged at Rezhel. Rezhel was suppressed by a black ball that didn't look very big. This also made it impossible for him to move. Every time he tried to recover, it would be destroyed instantly. His core was exposed to the air too. It couldn't cover his flesh at all. Nanier looked at the bronze door again. It seemed like she was panicking too. But when she looked at Rezhel again, her eyes were filled with greed. "Fina Nizmi! Save me! Save me!" Rezhel couldn't move at all. He could only use his weak spiritual power to try to ask Nanier for help. "Okay. I'm coming to save you." Nanier walked forward step by step. Suddenly, Nanier pounced at Rishal's core. His core was several meters in diameter. Nanier's palms pressed firmly against the core. Her 10 fingers turned into tendrils and started piercing into the core. "Fina Nizmi! What are you doing? Stop! Stop!" Rezhel screamed in terror. But he couldn't move. His body was firmly suppressed by the black ball. "Rezhel, you can't be saved anymore. That person is here. Do you think you can escape?" As Nanier spoke, her hands didn't stop. She was still devouring Rishal's core. "How dare you!" "I dare!" Nanny replied. Among the otherworldly gods, it was always the strong devouring the weak. There was almost no such thing as the weak devouring the strong. Powerful spiritual power entered Nania's body. There was no rejection at all. It was as if she'd returned to her origin. Rishal's heart became more and more shriveled. But Nania didn't change at all. Qin Zhao entered the bronze door. The first thing he saw was the big truck. His expressionless face suddenly turned cold. Two powerful waves of spiritual power rushed out of the darkness. It rushed toward Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao was no stranger to this type of spiritual power. At this moment, two beams of light appeared in the depths. One was completely red, like a burning fireball. The other one was glowing with green light. It's that person! He's here! Cage and Quillen Masa were panicking. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect to meet Qin Zhao here. Fight it out with him! If they could, they would definitely leave this place without looking back. But there was nowhere else to run. Only by putting their lives on the line could they have a glimmer of hope. However, Qin Zhao quickly extinguished their hopes. In just 20 seconds, Cage and Quillen Masa's hearts were dug out. Qin Zhao's bad mood from the past 2 days was suddenly lifted. How dare you steal my things? He was tired of living. Qin Zhao put the truck and the two hearts away. When he went out, he found that Nanier and Pulwil had already escaped. Drive faster, Nananai urged. Even without Nananai's urging, Pulwil had already accelerated to the maximum. But just then, there was a loud bang in front, kicking up a cloud of dust. Pulwil hurriedly stepped on the brakes. Then the two people in the car saw Qin Zhao walk out of the dust. Get out! Qin Zhao ordered. Get out! Nananai said to Pulwil. At the same time, she got out of the car. Escape? It was impossible to run away from Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao just stood there and stared at Nananai without saying a word. Right now, Nananai felt her scalp go numb under Qin Zhao's gaze. Suddenly, she regretted her earlier recklessness. She'd actually done this to take revenge on Cage, Quillen Masa, and Rez Sal. She'd actually attracted this terrifying human. She was practically asking for death. At this moment, Powell also felt his blood run cold. There was a gun hidden behind his back. Perhaps the gun could give him a sliver of security. It's you! No, it's not me! Nananai waved her hands in fear. Hearing Nananai's voice, Qin Zhao immediately recognized that she was the one who'd provoked him. I've seen the surveillance footage of you robbing my gold. I also remember your voice, Qin Zhao said coldly. Also, you devoured my spoils of war without my permission. Nananai's face paled. She almost couldn't help but reveal her true form. But she knew very well that even if she revealed her true form, she wouldn't be able to defeat this human before her. That day, she'd personally witnessed how Qin Zhao had slaughtered her kind. Gold? The gold she'd robbed was his. Damn. Why wasn't his name carved on the gold? I can explain. Nananai was trembling all over. Okay. I'll give you one chance to explain. Qin Zhao also wanted to know the reason. He'd originally thought that a dangerous trap awaited him. But there was nothing. While Qin Zhao felt lucky, he was also a little disappointed. Just now, Qin Zhao hadn't attacked personally. He'd been using the black ball created by the little universe to attack. He just didn't know what kind of danger awaited him. He and I were both controlled by Elder Cage, Quillen Masa, and Elder Rysel. We were forced to rob the bank, Nananai said. I didn't know that the gold was yours at all. We were just enslaved by the 3 elders. But after we succeeded, the 3 elders wanted to kill us. One of the elders told us that they wanted to take revenge on you for slaughtering us, our kind on Demon Island. But to prevent the news from leaking, they wanted to kill us small fries. Then how did you know my contact number? Before we took action, we had already secretly investigated your phone number. We had a premonition that the 3 elders might kill us, so we made preparations in advance. I didn't expect that our premonition would come true in the end. Qin Zhao rubbed his chin, thinking about the cause and effect. No! Qin Zhao suddenly shouted. I've seen your surveillance footage. You weren't going for the gold at all. Stealing my car carrying the gold was an accident. It wasn't an accident. We thought that the gold was in the bank, but the security door of the bank refused to let us in, so we planned to give up temporarily. But we happened to see the car carrying the gold at the door, so we took advantage of the situation and drove away. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2582. Okay, that's enough explanation. Qin Zhao waved his hand. He couldn't tell if Nanier was telling the truth or not. But some things didn't need to be too calculative. One explanation was enough. Then, can I go now? Go? Did I say I'd let you go? You, otherworldly god! Qin Zhao looked at Nanier. Why do you think I'd let an otherworldly god go? You didn't keep your promise. Promise? You were the one who tried to use depravity magic on me that night, right? Qin Zhao looked at Nanier. I remember your spiritual aura. Don't deny it. Nanier's expression froze. She'd wanted to get some servants. But she'd run into a ghost when she left. And now, she'd come to him voluntarily. Nanier saw a black ball condense beside Qin Zhao. Nanier gulped. Pulwell suddenly pulled out his gun and pointed it at Qin Zhao, shouting, Don't move! Qin Zhao smiled. Recently, there weren't many people who threatened him with guns anymore. Wait, Nanier said, raising her hands. Sir, we can talk. Talk about what? Who are you to talk to me? I can help you find otherworldly gods. They're hiding in every corner of the human world. Even if you stand before some of them, you might not be able to find them. Qin Zhao shook his head. I don't care about that. As long as they don't appear before me, I won't care. Hearing this, Nanier felt that she'd asked for a big death again. I can work for you, Nanier said. Then what do you think you can do for me? Sir, you're raising otherworldly gods, right? So what? I know how to raise better otherworldly gods. You're an otherworldly god yourself. Don't you hate it? Why would I hate it? We raise our own kind too. It's very common for us to raise otherworldly gods. Qin Zhao propped up his chin with one hand and stared at Nanier. You know how to raise better otherworldly gods? Yes, I do. Is this technique unique to you? Or do all otherworldly gods know? Only I know. What's so special about you? Since Nanier had mastered a technique that no one else of her kind had. Then Qin Zhao had to suspect Nanier's identity. It's not that there's anything special about me. It's just that I've devoured Rai Sar, the first elder of the otherworld god you killed just now. I've extracted information about this technique from his memory fragments. Then how did he master this technology? I don't know about his ears, Nanier said helplessly. The memory I extracted from him is not complete. Then what are the specific effects of your rearing methods? I can make the unusual god mature faster, and I can nurture elite unusual gods, or even top unusual gods. Only in terms of power? Qin Zhao frowned. What he needed were otherworldly gods to be raised as livestock. It's not meant to be used in battle. Therefore, power strengthening was meaningless to Qin Zhao. The flesh of an elite unusual god can increase the user's spiritual power and vitality by a small amount. If eaten for a long time, the effect will be even more obvious. The three elders have used this method to rule Fiend Purgatory for a long time. Because they've secretly nurtured powerful unusual gods for themselves to devour, their power is far greater than normal unusual gods. They've even evolved their own territories. Then, if I let you manage Fiend Purgatory, how long will it take for you to give me results? 5 years, Nanier said. That's too long. 3 years. Nanier quickly added. The larvae in Devil Prison can also be used, but they can't achieve the best effect. Only the larvae that are cultivated from the moment they hatch are the best targets to be cultivated. Then, the quality of the larvae can be gradually improved, and the maturity period can be shortened from 50 years to 20 years. Qin Zhao thought for a while. Sure, you have to give me results in 3 years. Sir, can I make my request? Tell me. I need at least 2 months of vacation every year, and I need payment. Vacation? Sure, what else do you need? First, I need at least 3 adult unusual gods as my food every year. At the same time, I need payment from humans and a high salary. How much do you think I'll pay you a year? $5 million. Chen Zhao shook his head. You're not worth this price before you give me any results. Then 2 million, at least 2 million. Nanir thought for a moment and lowered her request. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin and thought. Nanir added, I have 5 subordinates. I need to pay them. Sure, for 3 years I'll give you 2 million a year. After 3 years I'll raise your pay based on your results or kill you. When Nanir heard Chen Zhao say the word kill, she had an unnatural expression. Pack up. I'll send you and your people back to Demon Island in 2 days. Chen Zhao was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something. Oh, don't think about running. I've already left a mark on you. Nanir's smile was a bit stiff. Of course, I'm happy to work for you, my master. After I became your servant, I never thought about running. How could Chen Zhao believe the words of an unusual god? Bang! Chen Zhao flew away. Powell was so scared that he fell on his butt. Only now did he feel a wave of fear. Is that guy Superman? Maybe he has superhuman strength, but his personality is completely different. In terms of evil, he's definitely scarier than us unusual gods. Chen Zhao didn't know what Nanir thought of him, but he didn't care either. He cared more about his control of the realm. It seemed strong, but it didn't reach Chen Zhao's expected level. In fact, it was far from what he'd expected. It seemed like he needed more time to cultivate. After returning home, Chen Zhao entered the river map directly. He started cultivating again. To be honest, without the river map, Chen Zhao couldn't have reached his current level. Chen Zhao had never been a genius. Even though he'd had some opportunities, he was still far from a real genius. All Chen Zhao had was time. Even if he used a small portion of it to cultivate, he could still reach his current level. Chapter 2583. Chen Zhao's small world was at least 10 times stronger than before. However, Chen Zhao's goal was still far from the small world. The size of the small world had also increased, but not by much. After each refinement, it didn't even increase by half a meter. Chen Zhao's real gain was that the heavenly patterns in the small world seemed to be alive. The Nirvana flame activated the heavenly patterns. It was like a dead person being reborn. Chen Zhao, Bifla, Zhang Tianyi, and 23rd Blood Mary would discuss their cultivation progress and insights every day. Old Zhang, I think you guys have to cultivate the Nirvana flame too? Chen Zhao was the only one who had started cultivating the small world. Therefore, he was the one who had the most right to speak. Zhang Tianyi's cultivation was second only to Chen Zhao. He was one heaven's test away from Chen Zhao. I have my ways. My Starfire Ember might not be weaker than your Nirvana flame. It's not about power. When I refined the small world recently, I realized that the heavenly patterns seem to be alive. He's alive? Everyone's hearts jolted. What do you mean? Because they hadn't experienced it themselves, they didn't really understand the concept of being alive. Look at a withered tree and a towering tree full of life. That's the difference, Chen Zhao said. Once the heavenly pattern is activated, even if you don't do anything, it'll still grow gradually. Not only that, but the heavenly pattern also produces life force. It's not much, but it can increase one's lifespan by at least a quarter. Bifla, Zhang Tianyi, and 23rd Blood Mary were all very sensitive to life force and lifespan. 23rd Blood Mary didn't need to say much. She was going to die this year. If Chen Zhao hadn't given her a mixed yuan stone, she probably wouldn't even have the chance to get out of bed. Zhang Tianyi's situation was slightly better than 23rd Blood Mary's. However, it was only slightly better. He was already more than 120 years old. He wasn't as old as 23rd Blood Mary, who didn't even dare to fight others. But he didn't dare to squander life force carelessly now. Under normal circumstances, life force was consumed every day. A person's body would produce a certain amount of life force every once in a while. The younger a person was, the more life force they would produce. In fact, the supply exceeded the demand, and the life force was either absorbed or passed away naturally. Why did experts at their level live longer than ordinary people? It was because they knew how to absorb life force. Once they started fighting, they would not only consume their mana, but also their vitality. However, as long as they didn't overuse it, it wouldn't affect them too much. But once the intensity of the battle exceeded expectations, therefore, they had to use the life force of their origin. This way, it would consume a lot of energy. Why would burning one's life force increase one's combat power and recover one's mana quickly? It was because of the overdraft of life force. Vitality was a higher level of energy than magic power. Naturally, it could be exchanged for more power. But normal people wouldn't use their life force to exchange for power. Jiang Tianyi hadn't started consuming his life essence yet. But it was about time. When his body no longer produced life force, it was time for him to use the origin of life. The 23rd Blood Mary, on the other hand, had exhausted all of her life force. Without the replenishment of the primordial stone, she would probably die in less than half a year. As for Bifla, what was the purpose of his possession? Wasn't it just prolonging his life? No one liked the process. Bifla's possession wasn't smooth either. It could be said that he was surrounded by danger every time. It was a very painful thing. If Qin Zhao could make the small world produce life force, then it would be great news for the three of them. Of course, it would also give them more motivation. If that's the case, it's understandable. It's also recorded in the ancient books of our sect, Jiang Tianyi said. Jiang Tianyi said, there's a passage in the records of ancient Yuan, using the number of a radius to obtain the qi of 10,000 years. Now that I've heard Qin Zhao say this, I finally understand the meaning of this sentence. The number of a radius refers to our small world. However, the records of ancient Yuan was written by an unknown ancient genius. I think this person's cultivation probably far exceeds ours. This also caused the life force that his small world can condense to be incomparably huge. As long as it can match the life force that we consume, it's almost equivalent to an infinite life. Everyone was shocked. Infinite life force. It didn't seem so unreachable. Qin Zhao thought about it and said, from this perspective, it's true that the higher the cultivation, the more perfect the small world is and the more life force it can produce. But after cultivating for a few days, I'm afraid it's still out of my reach. Although the small world is becoming more and more perfect and its diameter has expanded, the amount of life force produced hasn't increased much. This means that this path is much more difficult than we imagined. It's almost impossible to obtain 10,000 years of life or even immortality. Qin Zhao's thoughts were much deeper than theirs. After all, he had experienced it himself. Right now, they were just guessing based on their own experience. He also borrowed the river diagram, even though he had only started cultivating for a few days. Although he had only started cultivating for a few days, he had actually been cultivating in the river map for many years. If the life force produced by the small world and the actual life force consumed could reach a true 1:1 ratio, this meant that he could live as long as the world and shine as bright as the sun and moon. But in reality, the ratio was 0:1, and after cultivating for so long, the life force produced by the small world was about 0.23. In other words, if there were no other accidents, Qin Zhao had obtained an additional 23% of his remaining life force. For the 23rd generation Blood Mary, Jiang Tianyi, and Bifla, if they cultivated to Qin Zhao's current level, the effect would be the same or close to it. Moreover, the shorter the time they had left, the worse the effect would be. If one of them was going to die tomorrow, they might not even get an additional 6 hours of life force. Moreover, Qin Zhao could feel that the more he cultivated, the less life force was produced. In the beginning, the increase was quite obvious, but the more he cultivated, the less the increase. Moreover, Chen Zhao believed that as his small world was gradually perfected, it might reach an upper limit. This was why Chen Zhao said that true immortality was just an unreachable dream. To the four of them, it seemed like they were already very close, but it was still unreachable. Chapter 2584. Everyone was in a good mood. They chatted from night to the next morning. Just then, Fei Lai opened her eyes in a daze. "Darling, I want to soak in the lake for a while. I want to float down." Ever since Chen Zhao had carried Fei Lai with his little world last time, she'd liked this feeling. For example, at this time every day, in Fei Lai's words, a bath was the fastest way to wake up. With a thought, Fei Lai floated up. Even the blanket on her floated up. "Go!" Chen Zhao flicked his finger and Fei Lai was tossed out. Chen Zhao prepared a toothbrush and toothpaste for her. After a while, Fei Lai came back dripping wet. "Phew! I'm much more awake now." Fei Lai wiped the water from her hair. "Chen, help me dry my hair." Chen Zhao snapped his fingers again. Instantly, Fei Lai felt the wind of a level 15 typhoon. Her face was already deformed. To be honest, no one could maintain their beauty in such wind, not even Fei Lai. "Raise the temperature. Too much cold wind will make my skin dry." Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Fei Lai was full of water at home and at work. Would she be afraid of dehydration? Nevertheless, Chen Zhao still used the nirvana flame and the heavenly pattern to raise the temperature by a few degrees. "Okay, let's go eat breakfast." When Chen Zhao and Fei Lai went downstairs, the kids who had to go to school had already woken up and were eating breakfast. Underlings were running in and out, preparing breakfast for everyone. Everyone was used to the underlings' service. In fact, they might not be used to it without the underlings' service. "Uncle, the school plans to organize an off-campus camping trip. Everyone has to pay $60. Didi La looked at Chen Zhao. The other kids also looked at Chen Zhao. "When?" Chen Zhao asked. "Next Monday and Tuesday. 2 days in total. Then use this time to collect horse and cow dung from the field. $1 per kilogram," Chen Zhao said. "Don't let the underlings help." Chen Zhao had never given cash to his kids. What he bought for them didn't count. But if they needed money themselves or wanted to buy something outside of the plan, then Chen Zhao would ask them to earn the money themselves. Of course, Fei Lai would be the one in charge. Chen Zhao also thought this was a good plan. Okay. Didira and the others weren't pampered children. They agreed without hesitation. If the cow dung was processed into fertilizer, it would only cost around $10 per ton. But the real meaning of this matter was never those few dollars. "Honey, do you have any plans for today?" "No," Chen Zhao said. "After sending the kids to school, I'll ask Felwood to come over." "What's the matter?" "No, Coco recently released a new bag, and I'm planning to buy it." "Okay, I'll book it for you." When Fei Lai went out, Portia was there too. Chen Zhao had Portia look after the house while he sent the kids to school. "Felwood, are you free now?" "Yes, Mr. Chen." "Where do you need me to go?" "Come to my house." "Yes, by Mirror Lake." "Okay, please wait a moment." Half an hour later, Felwood Cisco arrived. "Hello, Mr. Chen." "Yes, sit." Chen Zhao nodded. "How's the construction of my private airport going?" "It's going well," Felwood Cisco said. "It should be ready in the fall." "Sure," Chen Zhao said. "Don't delay the construction. Also, I called you here for something else." "Please go ahead." "Do you remember that I told you last year that I have a big project on hand?" Felwood Cisco perked up. Of course he remembered. For this, he'd hired many more workers. However, there was no news from Chen Zhao. His company was already feeling a little pressured from paying the salaries of these workers. Recently, he was even planning to fire some of them. The project has been confirmed. The first investment should be $10 billion, Chen Zhao said. I've already started raising funds, but there's no public bidding yet. I'm not the only one involved in this project. There are a few major shareholders too, so I need you to give me a clear answer. How much can you take? Felwood Cisco's jaw dropped. He stared at Chen Zhao in shock. His eyes were filled with disbelief. $10 billion! This amount of money was enough to build a small city. What project was Chen Zhao talking about? Mr. Chen, can you tell me the details of the project? Do you know about Nanchi Island? Chen Zhao asked. Felwood Cisco's eyes widened again. Of course he knew. How could he not? There were already all sorts of rumors about Mystical Island in the market. One of them was that the owner of Mystical Island was going to develop it as a tourist island. As a member of the construction industry, Felwood Cisco had been asking around for information. He wanted to see if he could get some benefits. However, basically everyone else knew about the information he got. He couldn't even find the person in charge. He couldn't even get some benefits. But he didn't expect that. Chen Zhao was the owner of Mystical Island. Moreover, he couldn't just get some benefits. A pot was placed before him. There were a few pieces of meat and a few mouthfuls of soup. It was all up to him. This is the plan for the first phase of the project. Take a look. Felwood Cisco felt like he was suffocating. There were dozens of big and small projects. The largest projects were all over $500 million. One of the biggest projects was the reclamation project and a medium-sized airport. The current budget was $5 billion. Moreover, this was only the first phase of the airport. The second phase would be expanded. At this moment, Felwood really wanted to slap himself. Why didn't he learn from his mistakes? Chen Zhao had already reminded him a year ago. However, he was still cautious. Now, he was in a very awkward position. Mr. Chen, I think I can take on the shopping street and airport projects, Felwood said. Give me your schedule, budget, and plan. Then contact my lawyer, the person in charge of the project. You know him too, Ms. Alex. Okay, I'll give you a plan as soon as possible. Felwood, we're old acquaintances, but I hope you can give me a satisfactory construction plan for this project. Otherwise, even with our relationship, I can't give the project to you. I understand. I know. Chapter 2585. When Felwood Cisco left, his mind was still muddled. He didn't know how he'd return to the company. But he woke up very quickly. This wasn't the time to joke around. Every minute he was distracted was a minute of wasted time. His biggest advantage now was that he knew Chen Zhao. Plus, before the bidding for this super project was open, he didn't have any competitors. This meant that as long as he could come up with a design that could make Chen Zhao and the shareholders' eyes light up, he had a high chance of getting the project. But he really didn't have any famous designers. Designers who could win international awards couldn't do it just because they were suddenly inspired. In fact, being able to win an award already proved that they were indeed better than others. Felwood thought for a while and decided to hire a few more famous designers. It wasn't the time to save money. If he saved money now, he might lose this super project. Felwood sighed again. A big shot would always be a big shot. Felwood had thought that he had a rough understanding of Chen Zhao's wealth. But now, he realized that he'd still underestimated Chen Zhao's wealth. Especially this project. How could a normal person afford it? Nanier brought her subordinates to Chen Zhao's house, including Nanier. When she saw Chen Zhao's manner, she was still shocked. Mr. Chen. Nanier gulped. Chen Zhao waved his hand. Call me boss from now on. Chen Zhao glanced at the people behind Nanier. Are they your subordinates? Apart from Perwer, the others all seemed rather unruly. When Chen Zhao glanced over, they even glared back at him. It was as if they were saying, What are you looking at? Are you looking for a beating? Chen Zhao's face suddenly turned fierce. In an instant, the four people flew back at the same time. They felt like they'd been punched in the chest. They flew out, but Chinzhao lifted them up and pulled them back to their original positions. When you face me in the future, please show fear. Do you hear me? Nanier and Pol didn't even dare to fart. When they'd gone back to talk to Sedmer and the others, they'd simply said that she'd found a boss for them. They'd just follow this boss. They thought that he was just an ordinary boss. And then, he was taught a lesson. If you hear me, please answer me. If you still don't understand, then I think I need to change your group of employees. Boss, they can't speak when you choke them. Chinzhao finally loosened his control over them. However, Sedmar and the others were already scared out of their wits. Do you understand now? Understood, understood. Be good. Chinzhao nodded and looked up at Nanier. Get ready. I'll arrange a ship for you to go out in 3 days. Also, if anyone dares to make trouble for me, you'd better throw them into the sea early. If you wait for me, I'll throw you and you into the sea to feed the sharks. Also, there's some money in this card. You can buy whatever you want for the next 3 days. In the future, you won't have the chance to enjoy yourself for most of the year, so I suggest you buy some things to pass the time on the island. Boss, who is that person? It's better if you don't know. But boss, we've already become his subordinates. What's there to hide? If you want to know who he is, you must first understand who I am. More accurately, what I am. Everyone swallowed their saliva, and their eyes were filled with panic. They already knew that Nanier wasn't human. However, after daily contact, they felt that Nanier was a bit difficult to please. But at least they were birds of a feather. So, it wasn't unacceptable. I'm not human. Everyone responded to Nanier with a look that said, we already knew it. If we really have to count, I should be a god. God? Everyone was dumbfounded. This abominable fellow was a god? This was completely different from the gods in their minds. They really couldn't accept a god like this. Of course, in your understanding, I'm an evil god, Nanier said. Of course, I'm far from as powerful as you think. The 3 you saw that day are my kind. They're relatively powerful evil gods. They can use spiritual magic to cause people to fall into deep fear and make them sink into the illusions they create. Boss, then you're not good people. I don't need to make you fall. I like your desire. Your desire is my best food. But whether it's me or the 3 old guys, we're all meat raised by others. Not long ago, we were all enslaved by a terrible demon named Leviathan Aberrant Tajimus. His strength is beyond your understanding. Then explain it in words we can understand. 4 months ago, a powerful American fleet attacked Leviathan Abhantegmus, but the battle only lasted for an hour. The entire fleet, together with thousands of American soldiers, sank into the sea. The flesh and blood of the soldiers were thrown down and became our food. Everyone swallowed, their eyes full of fear. Then that man came. Nanier's voice trembled with fear. He killed thousands of demons. Tajimus's island was almost razed to the ground by him. Tajimus begged for mercy in front of him, but he turned a blind eye to Tajimus's pleas and took everything away from him. We were deliberately released by Tajimus to stop him, but that horrible human crushed us like bugs. You can't imagine how horrible that human is. He's more like a demon than a demon. Everyone was trembling with fear. I escaped during the chaos. I thought I would never meet him again, but Nanier felt a little regretful at the moment. To be honest, I really admire you. Nanier glanced at Sedmar and the others. I thought you should be smart enough to understand the situation, but you actually dared to stare at that man. Everyone wanted to cry but had no tears. Their thoughts were completely opposite of Nanier's. They felt that Nanier had not warned them. Then it was certainly not a big shot. Chapter 2586. Get on the boat. We won't wait for you if you're late. Simenta looked at the people who were late. Her temper was still the same. Of course, her attitude depended on who she was talking to and her mood. For example, right now, she was in a bad mood. Very, very bad. This time, she had to take the route she hated the most. Demon Island, ever since the trip to Demon Island. Simenta had always avoided this place. But not long ago, she received a call from Qinzhao. He wanted her to help him send a few people to Demon Island. She'd refused. But Qinzhao told her that if she refused, her boat wouldn't even be able to leave the open sea. Accidents would happen. Simenta cursed in her heart. Then, she obediently accepted the $1 million labor fee. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a small amount either. It was enough for her to go to Demon Island once and still have some leftover money. She had a deep impression of Qinzhao. If possible, she hoped that Qinzhao would never think of her. Unfortunately, as long as she was on the sea, she would never be able to get rid of Qinzhao. Nanier stared at Simenta with a dark expression. "Do you know who you're saying this to?" Nanier said coldly. Her voice was filled with murderous intent. "Don't scare me. I know who you are," Simenta said indifferently. "If you dare to attack me, you better think about the consequences." "Humph!" Nanier could tell that Simenta was using Qinzhao to threaten her. But she really couldn't ignore this threat. "Call a few people to help me move my things," Nanier said. 3 days ago, Qinzhao had given them a card. They thought that the card didn't have much money. In the beginning, they spent it carefully. But soon, they realized that in 3 days, even if they bathed in champagne and ate delicacies, they still couldn't spend all the money in the card. Then they started their shopping spree. Of course, they also listened to Qinzhao. He prepared countless entertainment items for them for the next year. Basically, the luggage would be their future entertainment. They couldn't help it. There really wasn't much entertainment on Demon Island. "That's not in my service. These are all our boss's things," Nanier said. Simenta was speechless. She didn't have the courage to say no. "Vestana, I'm leaving." Yanghua looked at Vestana, who was now completely dispirited. In reality, Yanghua was even more depressed than her. He could finally understand what his grandmaster had been saying. "You are not comparable to him. What does this sentence mean?" "Are you leaving too?" Vestana's breath reeked of alcohol the moment she opened her mouth. But her mind was still clear. "Mr. Torty has told you about the power that Qin showed on Demon Island, right?" Yanghua stared at Vestana. "You can't win. That's what you think. I don't accept it." Vestana sounded resentful. During this expedition to Bermuda, all of her men were killed on Devil Island, including her most trusted Brits. This was the time when she needed help, but Yanghua chose to leave her at this time. How could she not feel resentful? As expected, Toddy Belster was trustworthy. At least he didn't betray her. Yanghua had an impulse in his mind. He wanted to stay and continue helping Vestana. But Akrabuman, his little dragon girl, didn't agree. His wife had risked her life to go to Demon Island for him. Now, it was time for him to pay his debt. He had to listen to Akrabuman and return to Dragon Tiger Mountain. It was too dangerous here. He didn't know if Qinzhao would harm him if he knew he was still here. He wasn't afraid of Qinzhao. But he couldn't guarantee that Qinzhao wouldn't hurt Akrabuman. If Qinzhao really did something to them, he couldn't protect his wife at all. So, he had to leave with her. "You can leave now," Vestana said coldly. "Oh, you're not resigning. I'm firing you." Yanghua sighed. "If you think this can keep some dignity, I'll respect your decision." With that, Yanghua turned and left. Just then, Vestana spoke again. "Yang, if you still care about our past relationship, please give me the latter part of that secret technique." Yanghua hesitated. He turned and looked at Vestana. "Vestana, even if you complete the technique, it'll be difficult for you to defeat him. Didn't Master Toddy tell you? That man is terrifying." "He did, but I don't want to still be that weak, ordinary person." "All right, this is what you need. Remember, you won't be able to defeat him with this mystic art alone." Yanghua tossed a Taoist art book in front of Vestana and strode away. Just then, Toddy Belster appeared before Yanghua. "Master Toddy. Are you leaving?" Toddy Belster asked. "Yes, Master Toddy. If you can, please persuade Vestana." You know that she's not facing an enemy at all. She's facing despair. I know. Toddy nodded. Both of them sighed at the same time. They moved away from each other and headed in different directions. Toddy Belster walked into Vestana's office. The office was filled with empty wine bottles. The strong smell of alcohol permeated the air. Vestana sat on the desk. There was a wine bottle beside her. Master Toddy, I hope you're not here to say goodbye. Vestana was very depressed. Of course not. Toddy smiled faintly. At least it's not in my consideration for now. But if you continue to be so depressed, I'll have to consider leaving. Vestana slowly raised her head. Then, Master Toddy, what's your plan? First, I'll recruit people, Toddy said. I'll rebuild the psionic team. That's right. I'll build a stronger team, Vestana said, gritting her teeth. No, I'll recruit stronger spiritualists from all over the world. They won't be limited to the small North American spiritual world. A strange light flashed in Toddy Belster's eyes. He was the nail that Qin Zhao had left behind. After the turmoil in the psionic team, he didn't need to be a mercenary anymore. He would become the second in command of the psionic team. He could stand in the light. He could even completely control the psionic team. On the surface, he was Qin Zhao's enemy, but in reality, he would secretly cooperate with Qin Zhao. Chapter 2587. At the airport. Yang Wu didn't expect the person to be Qin Zhao. I thought you would stay. Akra Man tugged at his man. Yang Wu took a deep breath and looked at Qin Zhao. Are you here to mock me? You think I'm here to mock you? Isn't it? Qin Zhao looked at Yang Wu. He didn't answer his question directly, but his lips curled into a smile. Yang Wu sighed. After a while he said, Let Vestana go. Yang Wu knew that Vestana would not give up so easily. He also knew that Vestana couldn't defeat Qin Zhao. Even though he had reminded Vestana many times, she still couldn't help it. But Vestana still felt that she had a chance. She still had a chance to defeat him. This was because she didn't have a clear idea of Qin Zhao's strength. It was a terrifying thought. It's very simple. As long as she gives up those foolish thoughts, I won't touch a single hair on her head. Yang Wu silently turned his head and left. If he could persuade Vestana, that is, then he wouldn't have to waste his breath on Qin Zhao. Just because he couldn't convince Vestana. That was why he wanted to get an acceptable answer from Qin Zhao. Unfortunately, Qin Zhao did not do as he wished. Mara and Sindora were going to school today. They were not unfamiliar with the school. When Qin Zhao brought Mara and Sindora to the newly built kindergarten, it was filled with parents and children. In fact, when the townspeople heard that Qin Zhao's 2 children were going to this kindergarten, they all wanted their children to go there too. The reason wasn't too complicated. It was just that Qin Zhao was rich. When Didi and the others were enrolled in the town's primary school, Qin Zhao had sponsored them quite a bit of money. He had improved the condition of the school and the teaching quality of the school. Of course, these parents hoped that their children would receive the same environment and education. Moreover, Qin Zhao was the bread and butter of half of the town's residents. Even from the perspective of worldly wisdom, they also hoped to get closer to Qin Zhao through the child. Some parents who were slightly familiar with Qin Zhao all greeted him. Many people looked familiar to Qin Zhao. Many of them opened various shops in the town. It was the only business in town. Therefore, Qin Zhao wasn't too unfamiliar with it. Qin Zhao maintained his smile. This was a typical social gathering. Qin Zhao didn't like this kind of social interaction. But in the end, it was inevitable. Clive and Ampa were in charge of registering the children one by one. Of course, Sindora and Mara had already completed the registration. Including Mara and Sindora, there were a total of 20 children enrolled in the school. However, there were more than 50 children and parents who came for the interview. In fact, in Europe and the United States, high-end kindergartens all used an interview system. First, the child's intelligence level was assessed, followed by the parents' literacy and family background. Apart from a few special families, the board of directors would specially enroll them in order to create an image. For example, lesbian couples, gay couples, their children were usually adopted. Most of the time, as long as they reported their identity, most schools would enroll their children. Because if he rejected them, he would face a lot of trouble. There was once a gay black couple who adopted a child. However, when they were going through the enrollment procedures for the child, they were rejected by the school. As a result, their neighbor exposed the incident to the media. As a result, the school, from the teachers to the board of directors, was severely criticized by the media. Discrimination against black people, gay people, and adoption were all sensitive topics in the United States. As long as one was in this society, no one could be exempted. Even Qin Zhao didn't dare to mention these topics easily. Of course, if there were really residents who wanted to send their children to kindergarten, Qin Zhao wouldn't have any objections. Other than those sensitive topics, most of the residents in the town knew each other well. Qin Zhao had already invested a lot in the kindergarten's facilities. Even the school bus was equipped with one. In fact, the town government provided a school bus and was willing to stop at the kindergarten. However, Chen Zhao still considered other issues, so he chose to pay for one himself. Then there were the kindergarten teachers. Other than Clive and Ampa, they'd also recruited 2 qualified teachers. The morning was basically for the children to get to know each other. At the same time, the children could get to know the teachers. After spending the morning with other children, Mara and Sindora were already running around with other children in the afternoon. In terms of children's education, foreign countries were indeed more advanced than China. The difference wasn't in terms of facilities or teachers, but mainly in terms of ideology. Especially in kindergarten, there was almost no cultural content. Most of them were intellectual development through fun and education. As for the current situation in China, they were already stuffed with knowledge from kindergarten onwards. Math and English were almost compulsory courses. Then there were all kinds of music and instrument lessons. Some parents even started signing their children up for extracurricular and hobby classes when they were 4 or 5 years old. Qin Zhao suspected that these extracurricular classes were probably the parents' own lack of childhood, so they wanted their children to make up for it. Of course, there were cram schools for children overseas too. Those who could afford it would hire private tutors, while those who couldn't would be sent to cram schools. However, most parents would wait until their children reached a certain age. Today was the start of kindergarten. The procedure was simple. School ended at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. It was rare for Chen Zhao to spend half a day with Sindora and Mara. On the way home, Chen Zhao didn't drive. Instead, he walked home with the 2 children. It was about 15 minutes away from Mara Lake. It was less than 3 kilometers. Sindora and Mara ran in front. Occasionally, they would run into the cornfield beside the road. This cornfield on the other side of Mara Lake was also old. Not long ago, Qin Zhao had bought it from a resident of the town. This meant that Qin Zhao's private land covered 7.5 square kilometers. 1/4 of Mountain Town and half of the agricultural land were in Qin Zhao's hands. Just then, Qin Zhao's phone rang. "Hey Zhang, what's up?" "Qin Zhao, it's almost New Year. I'm calling to wish you a Happy New Year." Qin Zhao was stunned. He'd almost forgotten. It was almost Chinese's traditional festival, Spring Festival. "How about it? Do you plan to go back for New Year?" "Forget it. It's not convenient for my family. You're rich, so why would you be afraid?" Chapter 2588. "I'm not going back," Qin Zhao replied emotionlessly. "I've been busy lately. There wasn't anyone or anything worth worrying about in the country." "Bullshit," Zhang Tianyi said mercilessly. "You're not even in charge. Even if you want to find an excuse, find a better one. You know it's an excuse, but you're still nagging. Come back for New Year. You haven't been back in 2 or 3 years." Qin Zhao rubbed his forehead. 2 years and 4 months. Qin Zhao had gone abroad after National Day 2 years ago. "You're back in glory now. Come back and show off to your old classmates and teachers. Do I look like a pain in the ass? I'm just trying to make you happy. How about you introduce a few female nuns? That'll make me happy. If I dare to give them to you, do you dare to take them? If you do, I'll give them to you. Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi fell into an endless argument over the same sentence. Sometimes, as the two strongest people in the world, their EQ and IQ would show huge flaws. Sometimes, as the two strongest people in the world, their EQ and IQ would show huge flaws. To put it simply, they were retarded. Chen Zhao, don't you want to communicate with the spiritual world in the country? Communicate with what? With my current level, do I care about communicating with them? Chen Zhao's words were rather arrogant. Nevertheless, he did have the right to say that. I have some unique Taoist books and some books of other systems. Don't you want to see them? Where did you get them? You didn't steal them, did you? A few hundred years ago, the struggle for orthodoxy was very cruel. Entire families were killed at every turn. It wasn't much different from the Dark Ages in Europe. Dragon Tiger Mountain can stand tall in this world. Do you think we've been obedient in the past few hundred years? That's why I don't dare to go. Maybe you've arranged some kind of trap for me. Then forget it. In any case, it's not convenient for ordinary people to read those precious books. If you're really sincere, you can send them over. What are you thinking? Taking these books out will cause old grudges. Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Master Sect is powerful, but it's not to the extent that we can fight against the world. Many of the books collected by Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Master Sect were related to old grudges. Perhaps everyone had forgotten about it. But if any of the books were to be missed out, that would remind everyone of some bad historical issues. Chen Zhao, I'm sincerely inviting you to be a guest at Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Master Sect. I think you really need to come. Come, give me a reason why I must go. Don't you want to see this ancient book with your own eyes? There are many things in here that I don't understand, but perhaps you can. Don't joke around. You're an expert in Taoism, the boss of Taoism. I might not be able to understand what you understand, but I definitely won't be able to understand what you don't understand. Are you trying to overpraise me to death? No, I'm serious. Zhang Tianyi said. After communicating with you the last time, I realized that the content recorded in records of ancient Yuan was far more profound than I understood. If we only relied on our communication, I'm afraid it would be very difficult to fully understand these things. You're different. You personally comprehended it, so you definitely have a better understanding of the things recorded in records of ancient Yuan than others. You're overestimating me. I've never overestimated you. I know you're unorthodox, but the difference between us isn't decided by Taoism or knowledge. Zhang Tianyi said. You have your Taoism and I have mine. In terms of cultivation, you're one step ahead of others, so you don't have to belittle yourself. Chen Zhao sank into silence. Chen Zhao sank into silence. Zhang Tianyi continued. For cultivators at our level, our individual combat power has almost reached the peak of humanity, so the strength of cultivation is not the most important thing. Right now, we're opening up a path for the future, just like your daughters. Both of your daughters have extraordinary talent, but even though your cultivation is high now, you can't guide them. The further you go, the narrower your knowledge will be. You know how to cultivate yourself, but you don't know how to teach the younger generation. Moreover, the theory we've discussed isn't complete. I think we need to summarize it and compile it into a book. Okay, I'll think about it before replying. Soon, Qin Zhao returned home with Sindora and Mara. However, he was still considering whether to accept Zhang Tianyi's invitation. It wasn't Zhang Tianyi's first invitation. But in the past, Zhang Tianyi hadn't been this sincere. Qin Zhao had basically just laughed it off. But this time, Zhang Tianyi was strangely serious. Qin Zhao was a bit tempted. It was said that after one became successful, they would think about bringing good fortune to their descendants. Qin Zhao had the same thought. But his teaching skills were really just passable. If his ability could be counted among the top of humanity, if that was the case, then his teaching ability could be ranked at the bottom of the entire human race. Of course, there was also a deeper thought. It was the desire for knowledge. Qin Zhao also knew that he could only rely on himself now. But this path was really too difficult. No one could point him in the right direction. Hey Jiang Ting, it's me. Boss, what's up? It's New Year in a few days. Are you guys on holiday? No, it's on January 28th. Jiang Ting answered. No, give the company a holiday tomorrow. Also, everyone gets a big red packet for New Year. Jiang Ting was speechless. Her boss was trying to find an excuse to give the employees money again. This excuse was perfect and undeniable. Who could reject a red packet for New Year? She didn't want to be a sinner among the employees. Also, I plan to go back to China after New Year, Qin Zhao said. I'll have the employees come over for a gathering on the 15th, okay. Jiang Ting was helpless. After all, her boss had given her so much face. She also didn't interfere with the company's matters. It was even easier than when she started her own business. At least, when she started her own business, she didn't have to worry about all sorts of things. Utilities, rent, employee salaries, business, and the market response of her work. But ever since Qin Zhao bought her studio and expanded to become an animation company, she didn't have to worry about any of this. She didn't have to worry about any of these problems. After all of these problems could be solved with money. If they could be solved with money, then they weren't problems at all. Qin Zhao was so poor that he only had money. Chapter 2589. Money might not be able to solve all problems, but it could definitely solve most of them. Jiang Ting didn't have to worry about money at all now. Qin Zhao had also compensated her with all sorts of bonuses for her previous investments. It was even more than what she had invested in the past. As a result, her family thought that the Chinese cartoon studio she had invested in had finally paid off. Boss, if we start the holiday tomorrow, it'll be too long until January 15th. No company in the industry will give such a long holiday in 20 days. Although the market for Chinese cartoons wasn't very popular, they didn't have much time. Time was very tight for those who worked on cartoons. A skilled animation production team would have about 50 to 100 people, and it would take them about 10 days to produce a 20-minute episode of an animation. Moreover, it was hard to guarantee the duration. Sometimes, more time was needed. Therefore, most cartoons in the world would only be broadcasted after at least one season had been produced. It wasn't like many TV dramas, which could be filmed while it was being broadcasted. There were many scenes in cartoons. Perhaps the manuscript had the same feeling, but when it was made into a scene, it didn't have the feeling one imagined. This meant that the scene had to be remade. It could even be said that making cartoons was more complicated than filming movies. Boss, our animation team isn't full yet. If we start the holiday now, our production will be delayed longer, and we'll need to spend more money. Jiang Ting regretted it as soon as she said it. She had clearly forgotten about Qin Zhao's favorite thing to do, spending money. Then it's decided. Before Jiang Ting could stop him, he had already made his decision. Oh, everyone has to attend the party in 15 days. It's rare for me to come back, so I don't want anyone to be absent. Okay, boss, Jiang Ting replied helplessly. Jiang Ting hung up and went to her old classmate's office. Her old classmate was Liu Yuka, who had become the general manager of the company through her introduction. Although Liu Yuka was her boss in name, there was actually no difference between them. After all, Liu Yuka had been introduced to the company by Jiang Ting. Jiang Ting, what's up? Liu Yuka asked, pushing up his glasses. Old Li, we're the same age. If you dare to call me Old Li today, I'll call you Auntie Zhang tomorrow. Liu Yuka, that's enough. Alright, what's up? I really don't know what's wrong with our boss. He seems to enjoy spending money. Now that the company has just been established, he doesn't think about the company's development plan. He only thinks about spending money. I even suspect that he's trying to launder money. I've seen the company's financial statements and accounts, as well as the accounts transferred to the company. They're all clean. There's no problem. Liu Ke smiled and said, And do you know how to launder money? Money laundering will not be distributed to your accounts. Generally, money laundering will enter the company's accounts, and then through a shell company, contact their fake business, and then transfer the money to the shell company's account. In this way, the money will be laundered. Now, except for finance, all the other businesses are handled by you and me. Even if people want to launder money, they will look for you. I'm sick. I'd rather the boss be sick. He gives his employees red packets every few days. It's giving me goosebumps. Jiang Ting said with a wry smile. The boss called me again just now. He said that it's the Spring Festival. He gave the employees a long holiday and a red packet for the Spring Festival. Is our boss that rich? Liu Ke asked, confused. He had only joined the company after all the employees had gone on vacation. Therefore, he was still very unfamiliar with Qin Zhao. Therefore, he still had some doubts about his boss's wealth. I really don't know how much money he has, but we went out to sea once. At that time, he used his private yacht, a super yacht worth at least 500 million renminbi. In addition, we spent $3 to $4 million for a week abroad. If you haven't interacted with him, you won't be able to understand. Seeing him spend money gives me a feeling of fear. Jiang Ting paused for a moment, then said, In addition, he has a lot of connections. He knows the richest man in Central Asia, Gunbai Bifla, and he also knows top Hollywood directors. In addition, I think his connections in China are not weak. A person's wealth did not mean anything. But a rich person with connections could almost do whatever he wanted. Jiang Ting was actually reminding Liu Ke in a subtle way. She had graduated from a financial management major. There were so many subjects in the world, but those who graduated from a financial management major had the highest crime rate. Why was that? Because people in financial management controlled other people's fates. Moreover, in some companies without proper supervision, they could very well become the local tyrants of the company. Without supervision, they would lose their restraints. Therefore, they would be able to do whatever they wanted. Although Jiang Ting trusted Liu Ke, she still had to be careful. After all, she still had deep feelings for this newly established company and had high hopes for the future. In the Chinese comics industry, one needed to throw money at it. As for her usual worries, they were the worries of happiness. Therefore, although she complained all day, she was actually secretly happy. For example, the animation companies under large companies. Even if they had a huge corporation behind them. But their pockets were still tight. No matter how big their parent company was, they could not invest all their money in their subsidiaries. But Chen Zhao's investments seemed to have no limit. Darling, are you going to China after Chinese New Year? Sure, Fei Lai answered without turning her head. Do you want to go yourself or because of me? I want to go myself, but more importantly, it's because you want to go back. Papa, I want to go too. Little Jerlin suddenly ran to Qin Zhao's side and jumped into his arms. Aye. Little Larissa also ran over. Little Larissa was already very good at running. But she was only at the level of other children her age. She could not compare to Jerlin at all. Jerlin could already fly when she was 3 months old. Little Larissa was a far cry from little Jerlin in sports. Qin Zhao hesitated. He had only planned to go back with Fei Lai. Then, he would leave the kid at home. Didira also walked over. Uncle, I want to go to China too. Why do you want to go? I want to see what China's most prosperous spiritual world is like. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2590. DDRA and the others were also psychics. They were imperceptibly influenced by many rumors and stories. It was all about the supernatural world of Huaxia. But that place was too far away. Even though they were spiritualists, it was hard for them to come into contact with it. Now, they finally had the chance to let this powerful spiritualist from China lead the way. How could they give up this opportunity? Actually, Chen Zhao was quite curious too. The other children also showed strong curiosity. All right, then let's go to Huaxia together this time. After thinking for a while, Qin Zhao finally decided to bring the whole family to China. They were all his family, so going to Huaxia could also be considered as returning home. There was no reason for them to follow him back. Now, Qin Zhao's family celebrated Christmas and Spring Festival. In the past 2 days, Qin Zhao had been preparing for the Lunar New Year. All the fireworks and firecrackers were ready. Then, he went to his high school classmate Li Qiong's shop to buy it. It really wasn't easy to buy this thing outside. And because he bought quite a lot of them, we still need to do some registration. Qin Zhao and Li Qiong did not contact each other often. However, the connection was not completely severed. Li Qiong didn't know that Qin Zhao and her sister were enemies. Qin Zhao and Li Mu seemed to have a tacit understanding. They never mentioned this to Li Qiong. Qin Zhao knew that Li Qiong had been fishing for a rich husband. She seemed to be engaged to a Chinese man recently. Based on Li Qiong's experience, this Chinese fiancé probably had some family background. Otherwise, Li Qiong would not have agreed so easily. Qin Zhao didn't dislike this kind of purposeful feeling. Everyone has their own choices. Moreover, Qin Zhao wasn't a moral pace-setter. Portia could feel the change in Qin Zhao's mood these days. She knew that the most important festival for the Chinese, the Spring Festival, was in 2 days. Wasn't it just a festival? Was there a need to be so excited and expectant? The weather in Los Angeles had begun to warm up. The temperature had returned to the 20s during the day. The most obvious change was that the children could already play in the water in their swimsuits. Portia glanced at Qin Zhao, who was lying on the chair with his upper body bare. Qin Zhao hummed. He seemed to be in a good mood. "Boss, do you want some fruit?" "Wash 2 grapes for me," Qin Zhao said. "Boss, are you going to China after the Spring Festival?" "Yes." "Then can you take me to Huaxia as well? You borrowed money from loan sharks here. Do you need to take refuge in China?" Portia glared at Qin Zhao. He was her biggest creditor. She owed Qin Zhao so much that she couldn't even count it, and it was only getting more and more. It couldn't be helped. She couldn't control her desire to shop. Every time, he would suddenly wake up after shopping. But it was already too late. And she basically maxed out her credit card every month. At the end of every month, she had to freeload off Qin Zhao for food and drinks. Every time she thought of this, Portia felt like crying. She had a high-paying job, even higher than most people in the world, but why was she unable to make ends meet every month? "I just want to see Huaxia." Qin Zhao had planned to take Portia with him. After all, there were so many children at home. He and Fei Lai couldn't take care of them all. Just then, Qin Zhao called. "Hello, Lady Dailymore." "What's up?" "Chen, do you have time?" Qin Zhao rubbed his chin. "What's up? Just say it. I have a friend's child. Something happened. I hope you can take a look. Can't Navat's singer solve it?" Qin Zhao knew about Navat's and Dailymore's relationship. Navat Singer was both Dailymore's teacher and friend. Moreover, Navat's had a huge reserve of magical knowledge. If it was a problem that even Navat Singer couldn't solve, Qin Zhao might not be able to either. "Qin, what we need this time is powerful combat power," Dailymore said helplessly. "What's the exact situation?" "You better come personally," Dailymore said helplessly. "It's a bit complicated." "Okay." Qin Zhao thought about it. Dailymore was Stephen's daughter, after all. He had to give her face. Then, Qin Zhao drove to the address Dailymore provided. It was a luxurious mansion near the coastline in Beverly Hills. It was a mansion that wasn't even a quarter of Mirror Lake Manor's size. It was even more expensive than Mirror Lake Manor. Rasa had recommended Qin Zhao to buy some high-quality mansions in Beverly Hills for investment. However, after hearing the price, Qin Zhao gave up on the idea. If he built a mansion the size of Mirror Lake Manor in Beverly Hills, he could build a palace in a remote place with the money. For example, a private mansion in Beverly Hills had been sold last year. It was sold for a sky-high price of $1. $9 billion. It wasn't that Chen Zhao couldn't afford it. More importantly, he didn't think it was worth it. In particular, he often calculated the exchange rate between dollars and RMB. Chen Zhao called Daily Moore at the door and the door opened automatically. Chen Zhao stopped the car and saw Daily Moore, Navats, Singer, and a young couple standing at the door. Everyone had a worried expression on their faces. Navats Singer's arm was still in a sling and wrapped in gauze. She seemed to be injured. "Tell me," Chen Zhao said. "What's the exact situation?" The young couple looked at Chen Zhao. They seemed to be wary and suspicious of him. "Olette." Daily Moore looked at the young man. The young man thought for a moment. After exchanging glances with his wife, he mentally prepared himself and said, "My son seems to have become a demon." "A demon?" Chen Zhao frowned. "Do you or your ancestors have any special bloodlines? Or did they display extraordinary abilities in one generation?" "No." Olette shook his head and looked at his wife. "No. At least, I haven't heard of any of my ancestors with special abilities." "Did they not know or not?" Chen Zhao was suspicious. Special bloodlines wouldn't suddenly appear. In the spiritual world, the awakened were divided into wizards and awakened with special bloodlines. For example, Gaia was a special bloodline. Gaia didn't suddenly have a special bloodline. Instead, her ancestors definitely had dragon bloodline. "So, your child suddenly became a demon?" Chen Zhao asked. "Is that what you mean?" "My child isn't a demon. He's my child, not a demon," the young woman said agitatedly. Nine Heavens God King. Chapter 2591. No one would admit that their child was a demon. Chen Zhao could understand it as a parent's desire to protect their child. After all, Chen Zhao was a father too. However, this was definitely not the time to talk about love. "You guys didn't call me here to talk about parenting, right?" "It's inside," Dahlia said. When Chen Zhao entered the house, he didn't feel anyone else's presence. Chen Zhao turned around and saw that the young couple, Daily Moore, and Nawat Singh had followed them in. "Where are they?" The young couple gulped. The young woman took out a bronze key. The bronze key was clearly quite old. It was mottled with rust, but one could still tell that it was exquisitely made. After all, even in modern times, it wasn't easy to carve complicated patterns on a bronze key that was less than 2 millimeters in diameter. The young woman brought Chen Zhao to the basement. There was another door in the basement. Chen Zhao frowned. Chen Zhao realized that his little world seemed to be blocked by this door. Even the entire wall was blocked by something. The young woman walked to the door with the bronze key. Then she looked back at Chen Zhao. "Do you really want to open it?" Clearly, the woman was terrified by her son. "Open it," Chen Zhao said. "Of course, if you need, you can use this key." The young woman finally mustered her courage and opened the door. Instantly, the aura from hell spread out. It was a deep space. Even if the door was opened, Chen Zhao's little world couldn't expand inside. "I didn't expect there to be such a big space down here. Your interests are really unique." Chen Zhao glanced at the young couple. "We didn't build it," Olette said. "We just bought it 2 weeks ago." "Oh. It's not cheap, right?" "In fact, the price of this villa is 20% lower than the normal price, and the environment and location are excellent. The bank is eager to sell this property, so they even provided us with a low-interest loan. We thought that we were lucky, but now it seems that the bank also realized that there was something wrong with this villa, so they sold it to us at the lowest price." "Didn't you investigate before buying it?" "Yes," Olette said. "The owner of this house was accused of child abduction and murder. At least 6 children went missing here, but only the body of 1 child was found." At this point, Olette's expression was very unnatural. "However, the police found 6 children's hair and some blood in this house." "What about the original owner of this villa?" "The death penalty and a long-abandoned poison was used as a means of execution," Dahlia said. In the past, the United States used cyanide to execute prisoners on death row. This was a highly toxic substance, not the kind that would cause instant death. Only 0.06 grams was needed to cause severe poisoning symptoms. Those who were poisoned could be said to have been tortured to the extreme, dying in a drug reaction that lasted for several hours. Later, the death penalty was abolished because it was too cruel. Is that necessary? Qin Zhao frowned. A stable society rarely changes its laws or changes its behavior for some reason. This was a case from 5 years ago. At the time, it was a sensation. Although all kinds of evidence showed that the children had died in his hands other than the body of the child that was found, the bodies of the other children were not found, and he was still unwilling to confess. Even so, it doesn't seem necessary, right? Do you know where the child's body was found? Qin Zhao thought for a moment, and then shook his head. No. In his study, right in the middle of the room. Soaked in formalin, her organs removed. She's a girl less than 5 years old, Daily Moore said. Qin Zhao's expression changed slightly. When we bought this house, we only heard that someone had died here. We didn't know much about it. So you moved in? Actually, it wasn't their fault. With a cheap house, normal people wouldn't consider too many precautions that were beyond common sense. After we moved in, nothing happened in the first week. But one night, when Neil was eating dinner, he suddenly vomited. What he vomited wasn't food, but an indescribable white substance. We were scared and hurriedly sent him to the hospital, but the results showed that everything was normal. At the same time, we sent his vomit for testing. The results were very strange. The white substance was a mixture of liquid, protein, and tissue cells. It was like he ate a living thing and then vomited it out, Qin Zhao said. The couple nodded heavily, but their expressions were very unnatural. But there was no tissue structure. The testing was also very strange. They couldn't find out what kind of organism the cells belonged to. And then? Neil's behavior became more and more strange, especially at night. We often heard strange sounds. Qin Zhao listened to the couple's narration like he was listening to a horror story. The development was also like a horror story. The child called Neil became more and more abnormal. He did things that scared the couple. For example, he killed Jerry, who'd grown up with Neil. Another example was the destruction of all the furniture and decorations in his own room. Moreover, what he had done was not something a child could do. The day before things went completely out of control, Delamore visited Olette and found out what had happened to him. That night, Dahlia Moore brought Navats Singh over. At first, Navats thought that Neil was possessed by a demon. However, after 2 rounds, he realized that little Neil wasn't possessed by a devil. He was a demon. Navats Singh's magic injured Neil. The blood on Neil's body turned milky white. Just as Navats was about to subdue Neil, he suddenly exploded with even more power. He injured Navats Singh and escaped through the door. Just then, Qin Zhao saw a 7 or 8-year-old boy standing in the darkness opposite the door. The boy was staring at the people outside without blinking. This youth was obviously little Neil. However, Neil had a chilling smile on his face at the moment. Chapter 2592. Little Neil was less than 20 meters away from Qin. However, Chen's little world was obstructed by these short 20 meters. Qin Feng raised his finger, and a black ball condensed between his fingers. He casually pointed at Neil, and the black ball shot out towards him. However, the black ball suddenly disappeared in the middle of its flight. Huh! Jen was surprised. Just as Jen was about to step through the door, Navats pulled him back. Don't go in. It's very scary inside. I feel like my mana has been contaminated. Every bit of mana I use brings me one step closer to the darkness. Chun was no stranger to this. This was the power of hell. In fact, the aura of hell here was even stronger than that of the demonic island. This place wasn't as big as Demon Island, and it wasn't filled with demons like Demon Island. However, the environment here was truly like hell. What's up there? Just then, Madame Olette pointed at the ceiling and exclaimed. Above their heads, there was a layer of film-like substance. The thin film spread out from the door and covered the entire ceiling of the basement. What the hell is that? Olette's face was also filled with terror. Jen was also confused. This was clearly not a naturally occurring substance. These thin films were releasing an aura filled with the smell of sulfur. It was as if this thing had turned this place into hell. And this thing seemed to be expanding. At this moment, everyone realized that the ground had become sticky. The ground that was originally covered with concrete had now turned into a swamp. The concrete floor turned to sludge. Following that, terrifying monsters began to crawl out from within. These monsters were all strangely shaped. Some had slender bodies, while others had 2 legs on the left and 1 on the right. Some had 2 heads, while others had eyes all over their heads and bodies. They looked like something that had crawled out of an abstract painting by Picasso. That kind of asymmetrical feeling was very uncomfortable. Owlette and his wife screamed in fear. With a wave of his hand, a dozen or so black balls shot out. The abstraction-type monsters were blasted into pieces by Chen Fan. However, these abstract monsters did not have any substantial lethality. At least, Chen didn't sense any threat from them. They were more like the physical manifestation of some kind of power. Chen looked at little Neil, who had been standing there the entire time. Little Neil had a strange smile on his face. There was no innocence, nor was it pure evil. Anyway, that kind of smile made people feel uncomfortable. Jen grabbed a black ball. With a flick of his finger, the black ball flew out. But the black sphere disappeared again. Just like Jen's first attack. However, although the black ball had disappeared from Chen's sight, Chen could not see it. However, when Chen had created the black ball, he had added dark magma. Therefore, no matter where the black ball disappeared or went, Chen would be able to sense it. Unless the black sphere was blocked by a different dimension. However, Chen could still clearly feel the presence of the black ball. In other words, the black sphere was still there and had not truly disappeared. However, Chen couldn't be sure where the black ball had gone. Chen had an idea. He looked back at Violet and his wife. Do you mind if I tear down your house? Huh! The couple was dumbfounded. They did not understand what Chen meant. Chen, we're about to lose our lives. How can we care about other things? The most important thing right now is to think of a way to escape. We can talk about other things later. Daly Moore's words were not directed at Chen. Instead, she was reminding the couple. Mr. Chen, Daly Moore is right. The most important thing right now is to escape. Then I don't have to worry about anything. Hundreds of small black balls appeared around Jen. These black balls weighed anywhere from a few thousand to tens of thousands of tons. Chen could lift a black ball weighing 10 million tons with his little heaven and earth. However, he could easily create and control hundreds of black balls that were hundreds or thousands of times smaller. Chen waved his hand and hundreds of black balls shot at little Neil. However, the hundreds of black balls disappeared again. Just like before. The next moment, Chen snapped his fingers. In an instant, all the black balls that were lost in the unknown area were devoured and exploded. Every single one of these black balls was extraordinarily powerful. Even the weakest one was several times more powerful than a grenade. Thousands of tons of air was compressed into a ball with a diameter of 3 to 4 centimeters and released instantly. The impact it caused was definitely more terrifying than a grenade. Although the two energy release methods were different, one was physical energy, the other was a chemical reaction, the effect was the same. They both produced an impact through the instantaneous release of energy. The weakest one was several times more powerful than a grenade. The stronger ones, weighing tens of thousands of tons, were even more terrifying. When all the small black balls exploded in an instant, the black balls exploded. Mr. and Mrs. Audette, Dahlia Moore, and Awatz Hingis all looked up. They saw that the ceiling above them had disappeared. Not only had the ceiling disappeared, but the entire villa had also disappeared. A terrifying air current howled above their heads. As expected, Chen had already guessed it. Now, he was even more certain of his guess. Navat Singh had long known how terrifying Chen was. After all, she had experienced it herself. Thus, her reaction was the calmest. The couple were ordinary people to begin with. They had been frightened out of their wits. They had no idea what had happened. Without the villa, Chen Zhao could finally feel the space around him more directly. The small world that had been surrounded by darkness suddenly became clear under the starry sky. Chen's little heaven and earth had completely expanded. Chen was no longer suppressed. He was no longer confined to a small space. Chen shot out another black ball. When the black ball was 10 meters away from little Neil, it suddenly made a turn and shot into the sky at a right angle. Although Chen's little heaven and earth had expanded, it still couldn't approach Neil. It was as if there was also a powerful little heaven and earth in front of him. Chen's little heaven and earth couldn't advance at all. This was definitely not a power that a newly awakened youth could possess and control. There was a powerful soul in Neil's body. "Get out of that child's body!" Just then Neil spoke. "Do you know who I am?" To be precise, it was the soul in his body. "No," Chen said calmly. "You don't have to tell me your identity. I'm not interested." Chapter 2593. Chen Zhao shook his arm and a neutron star condensed in his right palm. At the same time, little Neil also attacked. A black cloud appeared behind little Neil as gigantic red claws extended out from the black cloud. Chen Zhao's right hand was condensing the neutron star while his left finger pressed down. Instantly, the pressure in the small world before him increased by 100 times. The red claws were pressed to the ground and shattered. However, the flesh crushed by the giant red claw was squirming. It even showed signs of reassembling. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. 1,000 times the pressure. Chen Zhao's left finger pressed down again. Instantly, a terrifying force crushed the flesh on the ground. The flesh and blood were directly compressed to the point of separation. This wasn't enough. Chen Zhao's finger kept pressing down. It was like a huge hammer pounding the flesh into paste. The terrifying force kept hitting the ground. The flesh had already turned into paste. Just then, Chen Zhao realized that his small world was absorbing the flesh. It was very, very weak, but very clear. After absorbing the flesh, the small world started condensing life force. "Huh!" Chen Zhao was surprised. Was this the real use of the small world? The paste that Chen Zhao had pounded gradually lost its vitality as the small world kept absorbing. Little Neil didn't notice anything strange. He was still summoning the giant red claws. Chen Zhao's lips twitched. His eyes were filled with mockery. But look at Daily Moore, Not Sing, and the owlets. Chen Zhao and Little Neil were clearly engaged in an extremely dangerous battle of magical powers. Chen Zhao, on the other hand, seemed to be at a disadvantage. Chen Zhao's attacks weren't the kind that could be seen. Chen Zhao only controlled the small world to crush the giant red claws. Little Neil's attacks seemed more threatening. He seemed to be suppressing Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was struggling to hold on. The amount of life force he could absorb was very little. But it was better than nothing. The giant red claws weren't pure living creatures. They were probably only formed by Little Neil's power. Chen Zhao thought, what if they're real living creatures? And what if they're humans? Little Neil's expression turned serious. Clearly, he realized that Chen Zhao wasn't an ordinary opponent. Just then, Chen Zhao's neutron star was complete. Chen Zhao pushed neutron star out. Even though he had yet to touch Little Neil, he could still sense the terrifying power contained within the seemingly insignificant, or even insignificant, black ball. Little Neil's eyes widened as he raised his palms with all his might. "Ah!" Little Neil let out a low growl. It was as if he was lifting something heavy. The small world in front of him also began to distort. At the same time, he could have resisted Chen Zhao's small world. But to block Chen Zhao's neutron star, he had to concentrate the power of his domain. This caused the invasion of Chen Zhao's small world. Qin Zhao realized that Neil's little world seemed to be distorted. He recalled that he was able to change the trajectory of his black ball at a right angle. Now that he thought about it, he finally understood what Neil's little world was for. If Qin Zhao's little world had no element, it was the purest form of power. Then, little Neil's pocket world was to create distorted passageways. Just like Qin Zhao's previous attack, a small black ball shot toward Neil. Through spatial distortion, little Neil had directly caused the black ball to bend. To the black ball, it had been flying in a straight line all along. But to outsiders, it looked like it was making a turn. However, there was a limit to the power of spatial distortion. The black ball was like a piece of paper, but neutron star was like a steel plate. The difficulty of playing with it was naturally much higher. Suddenly, a malicious smile appeared on Qin Zhao's face. Just as he was about to release neutron star, he suddenly thought of something. Qin Zhao retracted his palms. Little Neil roared angrily. When everyone looked at little Neil, they realized that his body seemed to have bent. In fact, because everyone's vision had been distorted, little Neil's body also became distorted when they looked at him. But under little Neil's forceful spatial distortion, neutron star was finally sent to the sky. Neutron star shot into the sky. Boom! Without any source of light, it was like thunder. At the same time, the clouds in the sky were swept away. Instantly, the entire night sky cleared up. Everyone looked at the star-filled sky in shock. It was unprecedentedly dazzling and eye-catching. The owlets, Daily Moore, and Nawat Singh were all stunned by this shocking scene. The entire sky above Los Angeles turned bright. A huge hole appeared in the clouds in the sky. Qin Zhao started walking toward little Neil. Because Qin Zhao's small world had completely invaded little Neil's. So, he didn't need to worry about little Neil's counterattack anymore. With a serious expression, little Neil took 2 steps back. Stop! To move neutron star away, little Neil had used up a lot of energy. Now, he couldn't even let his small world fight Qin Zhao's. You can't stop me. If you come near me again, I'll kill this host, little Neil roared. Qin Zhao stopped. The owlets panicked. Mrs. Owlet shouted, What do you want? We promise you, don't hurt our child. Qin Zhao didn't speak, although he didn't want to let this powerful soul go. But he could understand the couple's choice. If he put himself in their shoes, he would make the same choice. After all, his child was in someone else's hands. In the end, it was the owlets who had invited him. So, there was no need for him to continue being the bad guy. But this didn't mean that he could just watch the powerful soul that had taken over little Neil's body escape. I want you to leave immediately. Now. The couple looked at Qin Zhao. But Qin Zhao stood where he was without moving. Sir, Qin Zhao glanced at the couple. If you back off, your child will be doomed. He'll kill your child's soul and then reconstruct his body. Of course, if you want me to leave now, don't come looking for me in the future. But little Neil is still in his hands. Qin Zhao licked his lips. If you leave this to me, I have a way to force his soul out. Haha. Maybe you can make my soul leave this body, but you can't stop me from killing this body. Then let's make a bet. Qin Zhao looked at the boy's appearance calmly. Kill this child. This is your only chance. Then I'll kill your soul. Chapter 2594. If he killed the child, his soul would lose its attachment. By then, Qin Zhao would have nothing to worry about. But facing Qin Zhao's aggressiveness, the powerful soul in the child's body was very passive. However, Qin Zhao had already expressed his attitude. If he didn't leave something behind today, then he definitely wouldn't be able to escape. He would either leave the child's body or his soul. But if he gave up this body, he would lose his last bit of support. After all, there was no way to restrain Qin Zhao. By then, his life and death wouldn't be up to him. The owlets looked nervously at the 2 people confronting each other. It wasn't that they didn't know what was good for them. They knew that not speaking now was the best choice. The situation here wasn't something they could participate in at all. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about risking his life. But the power that Chen Zhao had displayed was clearly stronger than his. And now, his little world had been completely taken over by Chen Zhao. Now, he could only hide in his little world. He wouldn't let Chen Zhao succeed so easily. He had predicted that this was the end of days. There was almost no one he could fight against. Even in the prosperous magic era, there were only a few people who could fight against him. So, he was confident that reviving in this era was the safest and safest. Then, he could slowly wait for the next prosperous magic era to arrive. In this era, he had enough time to accumulate wealth, resources, and manpower. He was already very familiar with this. He had experienced the end of days 3 times. The cycle of each spiritual tide was 500 years. In other words, he had experienced a span of 1,500 years. Of course, this didn't mean that he was 1,500 years old. Instead, he would wake up at a specific time each time. He was very accurate at this time. Every time, he would occupy a youth's body, and use a small amount of time to recover his cultivation to prolong his life. Then, he would occupy resources and wait for the spiritual tide to arrive. That way, he could get twice the results with half the effort during the prosperous magic era. The strong people who rose in the prosperous magic era couldn't surpass him either. After all, others rose with the era. But he could reach the peak at the beginning of the prosperous magic era. The first 3 times had been smooth, but he didn't expect this. He had just revived and already encountered such a troublesome problem. The man before him was even stronger than he had been at his peak. He had met all sorts of geniuses. Some geniuses could even threaten him. But even a genius needed time to accumulate. However, the man in front of him was unbelievably powerful, and he was very young. Chen Zhao made him feel extremely threatened. After all, he had originally thought that there were no experts in this era. Even if there were, they would be very old. They must have started cultivating during the middle and late stages of the spiritual energy tide. Therefore, they didn't have much time left. Basically, it was impossible to hold out until the next spirit chi tide arrived. Although the bodies he occupied were usually those of youths without any magic power. However, his realm was there, so his strength recovered very quickly. He had only occupied this body for a few days, but he had already recovered 70% of his strength. However, this was basically all the power he could recover. If he wanted to increase his strength, he wouldn't have to recover, but cultivate. At the same time, because he had slept and cultivated his soul 3 times, it had been close to 500 years. This was also why Chen Zhao felt that his soul was very powerful. Chen Zhao and Little Neil were in a stalemate. The powerful soul in Little Neil's body couldn't escape, but it couldn't beat Chen Zhao either. Moreover, his soul power had to recover to its previous realm before he could take over another body. Otherwise, even if his soul took over another body, it would be greatly damaged. This was because every time he took over someone else's body, he would sacrifice a portion of his power so that he could quickly fuse with the body. But now, he had already sacrificed a portion of his soul power, but before it could completely fuse with the body, Chen Zhao had come to him. If he wanted to take over a new body next time, he had no more soul power to sacrifice, so he could only sacrifice the essence of his soul. Suddenly, Little Neil felt something appear in his little world. However, because of the interference of Chen Zhao's little world, he couldn't clearly feel what it was. Little Neil immediately tensed up. He didn't see anything in his field of vision. But he knew that Chen Zhao definitely wouldn't coexist peacefully with him. Chen Zhao must be doing something that he didn't know. Just then, a smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. "It's here!" Little Neil's body tensed up instantly. The owlets also became very nervous. They seemed to have seen something too. Just then, Little Neil saw a black ball appear in front of him. Chen Zhao's little world had already completely invaded Little Neil's little world. Therefore, he could condense the black ball at any location within the range. Little Neil knew the terrifying power of these black balls. Did he want to completely destroy the boy's body? Damn, this guy is a demon. Little Neil instantly cast a powerful magic shield on himself. At the same time, the black ball exploded. Boom! With a loud bang, Little Neil's magic shield received a huge impact. However, Little Neil felt that the might was a little weaker. It wasn't as strong as he imagined. Did he use up his magic too? Or did he have other plans? Little Neil's expression grew more and more serious. Just then, Little Neil felt something burrowing out from under his feet. Little Neil immediately rose into the air. A smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. Little Neil suddenly felt his head hit something. He looked up and saw a black substance. The black substance was covering his head. It was waiting for him to crash into it. Damn! I was tricked! Only then did Little Neil realize that both the black ball and the thing hidden in the ground were just a feint. The real killer move was the black substance. It was precisely because his little world senses were messed up. As a result, he didn't even know what had invaded his domain. He didn't even know where it was. At the same time, the dark lava poured into Little Neil's mouth. Little Neil! The owlets exclaimed. They could only watch as their child was swallowed by the dark lava, but they couldn't do anything. Come out! Chen Zhao let the dark lava pour into Little Neil's mouth, nose, and ears. However, Chen Zhao didn't plan to show this scene to the owlets. Chapter 2595. In the churning dark lava, the powerful soul escaped from Neil's body. Roar! A humanoid figure flipped out of the dark lava. However, this figure was completely covered in dark lava. Since you want me to leave that body, then give me your body. The powerful soul ignored the dark magma on its body and launched its final attack on Jen. However, Chen didn't even give him a chance to get close. A wave of dark magma converged and smashed the powerful soul into pieces. The powerful soul was covered by the dark lava again. You damned bastard! Chen was still expressionless, ignoring the powerful soul's curses. However, the dark lava suddenly ignited with red nirvana flames. Ah! The powerful soul cried out in pain. The dark lava with nirvana flames suddenly shot out a sharp spike, piercing through the soul's chest. The soul struggled even more frantically. Chen raised his eyebrows. A strange feeling filled his heart. Compatible enemy. This was a long-lost feeling. Back when Chen activated the soul key, the first compatible enemy he encountered was the black dragon in the Tower of Trials. The so-called compatible enemy was an old enemy. What kind of enemy was a good enemy? Of course it was a dead enemy. Actually, they didn't have any grudges. However, they were compatible enemies. This also meant that they were destined to be enemies. If he let him go today, they would become mortal enemies in the future. Chen devoured the soul fragment he tore out of the soul's chest. Countless knowledge and memories surged into Chen's mind. However, this soul fragment was too small. Many of the memories were very fragmented. There wasn't a complete memory at all. But at least Chen knew the name of this powerful soul. Adu Rainster, from England. The first group of exiles on the American continent. Of course, rather than being exiled, it was better to say that he was self-exiled. However, that was all Chen Zhao knew. Just then, Adu Rainster launched another counterattack. Let's die together! Adu Rainster seemed to feel that Chen's attack was damaging his soul. This made him want to die. Bright red flames ignited on Adu Rainster's body. It was even redder and more shocking than Nirvana flames. It was the fire of life. A flame at the cost of life. Meanwhile, Adu Rainster had forced the dark lava away. Adu Rainster didn't choose to flee this time. Instead, he charged at Chen. The formless Adu Rainster actually engaged in melee combat with Chen Play. He swung his fist at Chen. Although Adu Rhinestone was in soul form, his soul form was 4 meters tall, more than twice the size of Jen's. However, Chen Zhao was curious as to what the point of such an attack was. Therefore, Chen did not dodge at all. But when the punch landed on Chen's body, Jen's head spun, and he staggered a few steps back. At the same time, Jen's soul was almost smashed out of his body. The next moment, Chen's soul returned to his body. Jen shook his head and looked at Adu Rainster in shock. What a terrifying soul attack! The focus of that punch was not a physical attack at all. Instead, it was an attack from the soul. At this time, Adu Rhinestone's second attack came. It was another simple punch. This time, Jen didn't dare to take the punch head-on. Instead, he quickly retreated to avoid the punch. At this moment, Chen's eyes shone with a ferocious light. Adu Rhinestone was both anxious and angry when he saw that his second punch didn't hit Chen. After all, the first punch could be said to be unexpected. He had thought that even if he couldn't kill Chen with his first punch, he would still be able to kill Chen. At the very least, it could damage Chen's soul. Then, he would be able to attack continuously. It was like a fight between two ordinary people. Whoever stabbed the other party first would have the advantage. That was Adu Rhinestone's plan. However, he didn't expect Chen's soul to be more resilient than he had imagined. It only took an instant for his soul and body to fuse back together. This caused his second attack to miss. The longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. This was because he was completely relying on burning his life force to temporarily increase the combat power of his soul. He couldn't last long at all. This time, Adu Rainster pounced at Chen. Although they were currently engaged in a magical battle. But sometimes street fighting was the most direct and simple way to determine who was better. However, Adu Rhinestone didn't expect something like this to happen. At this moment, Chen also chose to pounce on him. With a physical body, Chen was far superior to Adu Rhinestone in every aspect. This caused Adu Rhinestone to be pinned down by Chen. Chen pounced on Adu Leinster, then bent down and bit Adu Leinster's shoulder. What are you doing? Adu Rhinestone screamed in terror. The pain from his soul made him wail almost crazily. However, Chen didn't care about Adu Rhinestone at all. The soul fragment was chewed a few times in Chen's mouth. With the high temperature of the flame of life, it was swallowed into Chen's stomach. Although it was painful, it was still within Chen's acceptable range. Ever since Chen had completely fused with the blood of gluttony, Chen was already a hybrid with demon blood. At this point, Chen could already eat like a glutton. Moreover, the target was Chen's natural enemy. Thus, Chen Qi directly devoured Adu Rhinestone. However, to Chen's surprise, Adu Rhinestone's soul, which was burning with the flame of life, was even more delicious than he had imagined. It was even better than the most delicious food Chen had ever eaten. Chen licked his lips. Your soul is delicious. Instantly, Adu Rhinestone's hair stood on end. Behind him, Daily Moore, Navitsinger, and Olette almost peed their pants. Devouring souls. Even the thought of it was terrifying. Compared to Adu Rhinestone, they felt that Chen was even scarier. Get out of my way! Adu Rhinestone pushed at Chen with both arms. However, Chen pressed down on Adu Rhinestone's arms with both hands. Adu Rhinestone couldn't move his arms at all. Chen bent down again and bit down hard on Adu Rhinestone's neck. This time, Chen tore out a large piece of Adu Rhinestone's soul fragment. Half of Adu Rhinestone's neck was gone. Chen heavily sucked the soul fragment into his mouth. His cheeks puffed up. Chen chewed with all his might and swallowed with difficulty. Chapter 2596. In everyone's eyes, Chen Zhao was the scariest demon. Demon power! Chen Zhao discovered something from Adu Rainster's soul fragment. His power was very similar to Chen Zhao's. They both came from hell and demons. However, he was very different from Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's power belonged to him. But Adu Rainster's power was borrowed from a demon. He had to return the borrowed power. When Chen Zhao devoured half of Adu Rainster's soul, a magic formation suddenly appeared on the ground where Adu Rainster was lying. A demonic hand reached out from the formation and grabbed Adu Rainster's soul. The demonic hand emanated a terrifying aura. Even if it was just a hand. Chen Zhao's eyes flashed with displeasure. As he grabbed Yada Rainster with one hand, he smashed the demonic hand with the other. The demonic hand was smashed into pieces. Who is it? The magic formation suddenly turned into an abyss. A terrifying and angry voice spread from the depths of the abyss. Fuck you! Qin Zhao held Yada Rainster's soul and floated in the air. He retorted at the owner of the voice in the abyss. The owner of that demonic hand was a great lord-class demon. But so what? Just a little bit of power was already the limit of a demon lord. This bit of power wasn't even enough to scratch an itch for Qin Zhao. Even if his real body could come to the human world, Qin Zhao wouldn't be afraid of him. Human, I'll remember your aura. Just you wait. The greater demon overlord could only say some harsh words and not continue to infiltrate his power. He could also feel Qin Zhao's aura. Qin Zhao was at the same level as him. Unless his true body appeared, no matter how much power he used, it would all be useless. The greater demon overlord also understood that the two sides were separated by a world. Thus, they couldn't do anything to each other. Now that he was on Qin Zhao's main battlefield, he was even more helpless. The so-called threatening words were just giving himself a way out when he couldn't do anything. Qin Zhao glanced at the half-dead Yada Rainster in his hand. Most of his soul had been eaten by Qin Zhao. At the moment, his mind wasn't clear. Every time Qin Zhao bit off a piece of the soul, he gained more. Unlike when he absorbed the Black Dragon's soul, he only obtained a small number of fragments. This time, Qin Zhao's devouring method was more direct. As a result, the knowledge gained would also increase. Qin Zhao had a rough understanding of Yada's power. Yada Rainster had been a magician for hire in his early years. Not to mention leading a great battle, every time he went on the battlefield, he was surrounded by danger. However, his luck was not bad. He picked up a ring with a demonic mark. The original owner of this ring had a contract with that greater demon overlord. It was a very simple contract, similar to the modern usury. The greater demon lord would lend its power to the contractor in exchange for a soul sacrifice. Of course, the sacrifices were all other people's souls. However, the souls sacrificed each time were only counted as interest. Yada Rainster was indeed a capable person. His predecessor was abandoned because he was unable to repay the interest of the previous greater demon overlord. However, Yada Rainster had maintained this state for 1,500 years, and half of that time had been spent in slumber. Under such circumstances, he could still repay the interest of the greater demon overlord. One could imagine how many souls he had sacrificed in the past. Even the greater demon overlord admired Yada Rainster. He felt that Yada was a promising talent. Every time Yada Rainster obtained a new body, he would receive a gift from the greater demon overlord, giving him a longer life than normal people. Of course, this admiration came with a price. Yada Rainster's conflict with the greater demon overlord became even more complicated. The greater demon overlord could even sense Yada Rainster's condition. For example, just now, Yada Rainster's soul had been severely damaged. Using the contract, the greater demon overlord sent his power into the human world. He wanted to take back what Yada Rainster owed him with interest. If it was someone else, they wouldn't be able to protect their spoils of war. Only Qin Zhao dared to face a greater demon overlord head-on. The magic formation gradually dissipated. Qin Zhao looked at the incomplete soul in his hand. He didn't plan on letting Yada Rainster go. As for Nawat Singh and Delamore, their senses were much more stimulated than the owlets. After all, the owlets had only felt the impact of their naked eyes. But the two of them were facing a terrifying pressure that seemed to be solid. Facing an enemy like that, they didn't even have the courage to resist. They couldn't shatter the demon's hand like Qin Zhao had. Qin Zhao was silent for a long time. He muttered the demon's name in his heart. Shane Kazlafar. It wasn't a good thing to be targeted by a greater demon overlord. Perhaps Shane Kazlafar thought that he couldn't enter hell. But that didn't mean he didn't want to take revenge. Perhaps he couldn't fight Qin Zhao head-on in the human world. But if he wanted to create some trouble for Qin Zhao, it wouldn't be a problem. Clearly, Shane didn't know that Qin Zhao remembered his vicious words. Qin Zhao had always adhered to the principle of never waiting for revenge. Moreover, he wanted to use Shane Kaslafar for a small experiment. After devouring Yederainster's soul, Qin Zhao had a clearer understanding of Shane Kaslafar. Of course, Yederainster was only Shane Kaslafar's second party. His understanding of Shane Kaslafar was very limited. Qin Zhao glanced at the owlets. Little Neil's body appeared in the dark lava. He was sound asleep. Little Neil was sent to the owlets. "Qin, what's wrong with him?" Delamore asked. "His soul is severely damaged," Qin Zhao said calmly. "If you had come to me during the first 1 or 2 days after his body was taken, his soul wouldn't have been so badly damaged. But a week has passed and half of his soul has been absorbed by that guy. Just now, I forced that guy out of the child's body, so his soul was torn even more. Why did you do that? You could have saved my child." Owlet stared at Qin Zhao angrily. Qin Zhao glanced at her indifferently. "What do you think I should have done? I've already done everything I could. If you think that I didn't care about your son and let him become nourishment for that soul, then I'm sorry, but I was wrong." Chapter 2597. Facing the cowering couple, Qin Zhao didn't want to argue with them. Qin Zhao didn't want to bother with the couple who loved their son too much. At least, they dared to speak rudely to him when he was scary. It showed their love for their child. Qin Zhao wasn't in a good mood. But he still turned and left. Under their gazes, Qin Zhao soared into the sky and disappeared into the night in the blink of an eye. "Hey, old Zhang, I want to ask you something. You rarely talk to me in such a serious tone. What is it? Is there a demonic path in this world? Haha. What are you looking at that made you dumbfounded? No. There's no absolute demonic path in this world. There are evil sects, but there are no demonic paths. So you're saying that techniques that can absorb people's vitality don't exist, like in movies and novels? There are cultivation techniques or spells that can absorb one's essence, chi, and spirit, but I've never heard of a cultivation technique that can absorb one's vitality. Why? You met one?" Qin Zhao didn't want to tell Zhang Tianyi that he'd learned a technique that could absorb other people's vitality. He was worried that Zhang Tianyi wouldn't be able to control his inner demon. After all, it was normal for people to be more afraid of death as they grew older. To prolong one's life. Who knew if he would do something that would cross the line? Qin Zhao didn't dare to overestimate anyone's morality, even if the person was highly respected. Qin Zhao suddenly thought of a possibility. The heavenly pattern of the small world was like a growing sapling. The flesh and blood were like nutrients for the heavenly pattern. But Qin Zhao wasn't sure if everyone's small world and heavenly pattern were the same. Or did you learn a technique that absorbs other people's vitality? Zhang Tianyi seemed to have sensed something. Qin Zhao still answered Zhang Tianyi's question with silence. Zhang Tianyi seemed to confirm his guess. After a while, Zhang Tianyi said, "Can you tell me the specifics?" Qin Zhao was hesitating whether to tell Zhang Tianyi. But if Zhang Tianyi activated the heavenly pattern himself, he would eventually come into contact with it. The difference was nothing more than a question of whether it was a little earlier or a little later. In the end, Qin Zhao told Zhang Tianyi his discovery. Zhang Tianyi was silent for a while. "Are you afraid that I'll go down the wrong path? Don't you think I should be afraid?" Qin Zhao was really afraid that one day, he would be on the opposite side of Zhang Tianyi. For in existence at Zhang Tianyi's level, no one would be able to keep him in check once he harbored evil thoughts. Qin Zhao was the only person in the world who could fight against him. "I already have some guesses about your situation." "You have a guess? What you're absorbing isn't the life force in the flesh, but the nutrients." Zhang Tianyi's guess seemed to be very consistent with his own. "You and I both know that the higher one's cultivation, the longer one's lifespan will be. However, the key question is, how is the process of transforming power into lifespan achieved? What you've discovered just proves that the process of transforming power into lifespan. Although we haven't completely analyzed it, it has already taken us a big step forward. Zhang Tianyi paused for a moment, then continued. The flesh that your enemy summoned was made entirely out of mana, and didn't have any life force. However, your heaven and earth heavenly pattern was able to absorb it. This means that you weren't absorbing the life force of the flesh, but transforming it. You're already a big step ahead of the three of us. In fact, your progress is even faster than we imagined. In the next 100 years, you'll have enough time to become the world's top cultivator. And in the spiritual tide era after that, you'll be the best in the world. Zhang Tianyi's tone was a bit emotional, but also a bit envious. He wasn't envious of Chen Zhao's cultivation, but of his era. In the age of chaos, Chen Zhao's cultivation had almost reached the peak. His cultivation was enough for him to last until the spiritual tide era, and he even had a lot to spare. Moreover, with his surging life force, he didn't need to be like other cultivators of the same realm who didn't dare to fight even when they were old. For example, the 23rd generation Blood Mary. Her cultivation was indeed the best in the world. But now, she was like an ordinary old person. Even the slightest movement would hurt her muscles and bones. Every time she fought, she would use up a large amount of life force. To put it bluntly, the next 200 years would belong to Chen Zhao. And Chen Zhao wasn't just the best in terms of power. More importantly, he had thick skin and flesh. He had almost indestructible physical defense and terrifying magic resistance. This also eliminated the danger of him dying. Killing Chen Zhao was almost as difficult as destroying a modern country. And a country with nuclear weapons. After communicating with Zhang Tianyi, Chen Zhao suddenly felt happy. So he wasn't absorbing life force. Next, he would go to hell and kill the threat in the cradle. Chen Zhao took out another phone and called the handsome guy. Hi. The video call went through. Chen Zhao saw a battlefield, a terrifying one. It was a scene of billions of demons fighting against a terrifying dragon, while the handsome young man stood in the air. Chen Zhao remembered that terrifying dragon, ancestral dragon. He had been lucky enough to accept the handsome guy's invitation and ride on ancestral dragon once. For Chen Zhao back then and now, it was an extremely honorable thing. Rather than a battle, it was more like a one-sided massacre. Although there were countless of them, they were facing the most powerful dragon clan. When his wings were spread out, they could cover an entire city. A single breath from him could turn millions of evil demons into ashes. What are you doing? Chen Zhao asked. Watching a massacre, the handsome guy said emotionlessly. It was indeed a massacre. The billions of demons Chen Zhao saw were only the remnants of the defeated army. The battlefield stretched across the boundless realm. Countless demon corpses were still lying on the ground. I need to go to hell. Can you summon me there? Why do you want to go to hell? Chen Zhao told them the whole story. Simply put, he had to get rid of the root of the problem. Okay. Now? Yes. This was Chen Zhao's first time seeing a summoning. In the past, when Beelzebub Zophi summoned him, he could only see traces of a magic array left behind. However, the handsome young man's summoning was much simpler. He casually raised his hand, and the demon corpses below seemed to be affected by some kind of power. Their blood began to gather in the air, and a magic array hovering in the air was completed. Chapter 2598. In the blink of an eye, Chen had arrived in hell. The scene from the video was completely different from the feeling of being in a boundless battlefield. Even high up in the sky, Chen still couldn't see the end of the battlefield. Ancestral Graygon also sensed Chen's arrival. He still had some impression of this human. But to him, Chen was just a small interlude. It didn't affect his killing spree. Chen had an idea. Ancestral Graygon, do you still need these corpses? Why? Even if you use them as food, they're the most disgusting food. The handsome guy answered matter-of-factly. Do you need them? I'm not sure if I need them. The handsome guy gestured for Chen to go ahead. Chen landed on the battlefield. Even without Chen's control, the heavenly patterns in the small world were already absorbing the blood on the ground. Chen could feel that the small world was growing rapidly. The heavenly patterns in the small world were also flourishing. Chen was shocked. Why was the growth speed of the heavenly patterns faster than all the cultivation he'd done after activating them? One must know that his heavenly runes had been nurtured in the river diagram for several years at the very least. But in just a few minutes, Chen's heavenly patterns had at least doubled in size. After a closer look, Chen found the problem. Within the range of Chen's little world, a corpse caught Chen's attention. Even though the corpse was already dead, it was still emitting a powerful aura. It was the corpse of a greater demon lord. The greater demon lord's corpse wasn't very large, but the aura it emitted was terrifying beyond compare. No wonder! Chen's heart skipped a beat. Raising his hand, a wave of energy descended from the air and blasted the corpse of the greater fiend overlord. Flesh and blood splattered in an instant. Chen greedily absorbed the greater demon lord's power. Although the amount of life force he could produce wasn't much. Compared to Chen's total life force, it was just a drop in the ocean. But the heavenly patterns in Chen's small world were flourishing. Compared to ancestral Graygun, Chen was more like a trash picker. But Chen was very happy to pick them up. Just then, the handsome guy's voice reached Chen's ears. 1,000 miles ahead of you, there are 2 greater demon lords' corpses. Chen looked up at the handsome guy in the sky and nodded slightly. The value of the nearby greater demon overlord had basically been sucked dry by Chen. Qin Zhao ran straight to where the handsome guy was pointing. Although the corpses of the 2 greater demon overlords were inconspicuous, they were very easy to find. That was because they exuded an extraordinary aura. After absorbing the essence of the first great demon lord, Chen felt that the power of his little world had more than doubled. Rather than strength, it should be called growth. Chen used the same trick again, frantically absorbing the power of the 2 greater demon overlords as nutrients for the minor world pattern. Although the amount of life force was better than nothing, the growth of the small world had reached an astonishing level. The coverage of the small heaven and earth did not increase by much. Instead, it was more of an internal growth. The diameter of the pocket world was originally a little over 1,000 meters. Even after cultivating for a long time, it only extended to about 1,100 meters. Currently, the diameter of the small world was about 1,300 meters. Proportionally speaking, it had indeed grown a lot. However, compared to the increase in range, Chen was more concerned about the internal growth. After absorbing the essence of the 2 greater demon overlords, the power of Chen's little world had increased by at least 10 times. This was not the effect of 1 plus 1. The difference between a 200-kilogram fatty and a 200-kilogram strong man was not just a little. In the past, Chen's little world had always been fat. It was huge, even bigger than Zhang Tianyi, 23rd Blood Mary, and Bifla's little world combined. However, in terms of strength, it was even weaker than them. After Zhen activated his little world, the situation had improved considerably. Now, after a few internal growth, Chen's little world was much stronger than before. Just then, the handsome guy's voice sounded again. Your domain is very special. Special? Chen's heart skipped a beat. What's so special about it? Your domain has no attributes, but it has the ability to break down and reassemble other people's energy. Break down and reassemble? Chen was a little dazed. Even he could not understand the principles behind his little world pattern's operation. However, the handsome guy could see the principles behind his little world pattern at a glance. Everyone's domain is different, right? Actually, everyone's domain is the same. No matter how it manifests, the effect is the same. It absorbs spiritual energy from the outside world and transforms it into your own magic. Of course, it manifests differently, but the essence is the same. For example, you can use your domain to create neutron stars. That's the difference in manifestation. However, your domain can break down and reassemble other people's energy. That's very special. After all, Chun and the handsome guy were a Pacific Ocean apart, so Chun could only barely understand part of the content. The more profound questions, such as what the handsome guy had said about breaking down and reassembling other people's energy. All Jen could understand was the literal meaning. Also, the greater demon overlord you're looking for is in that direction. The handsome guy pointed Chin in that direction. Thank you. You're welcome. Also, don't forget my request. It's already in progress. That's good. I'll go there first. If there's time, we can talk again. Go. It'll be a tough battle, the handsome guy said. Is that Shane Kaslafar very strong? The handsome guy suddenly smiled. If I reveal the answer now, it'll be very boring. You should experience the battle yourself. Trust me, it'll be very meaningful to you. Hearing the guy's words, Chin could not help but be curious. What kind of battle would be meaningful to him? Chin did not know how far away Shane Kaslafar was from him. Anyway, if he followed the direction the handsome guy had pointed out, he would definitely be right. Chin moved forward in energy form, so he was naturally very fast. He also intentionally hid his aura. Shane Kaslafar remembered his aura. If Chin approached him, he would definitely sense it and raise his guard. Chapter 2599. In the southwest of Hell, in the center of the Black Land, there was a huge volcano that never calmed down. This volcano was called the Volcano of Despair. The volcano was tens of thousands of meters tall, and hot magma bubbled in the crater all year round. The diameter of the crater was even more shocking than the height of the volcano. It was 200,000 meters in diameter, more than enough to put a town inside. Within millions of square kilometers, it was all black land. There was no vegetation at all, and no demons or forces dared to stay here. As long as it was black, it only belonged to a demon. Shane Khazrafa, the lava demon. This used to be one of the few rich countries in Hell, a country that belonged to demons. The nature of demons was difficult to restrain and manage, so demon kingdoms were rare existences in the vast Hell. Compared to the long lifespans of demons, demon countries could only exist for a very short time. 1,000-year kingdom was already considered a long time. Thousands of years ago, Shane Khazrafa came. In just one night, the supervolcano erupted with world-destroying lava. Then, the demon country was razed to the ground. The name of the lava demon also resounded in the Black Land. In the following thousands of years, Shane Khazrafa continued to wreak havoc on this land. In the end, this fertile land became a wasteland. In the crater on the floating island where the lava had not spread, a 20-meter-tall red demon sat on his lava throne. Just then, a figure descended from the sky and landed directly in the lava, causing huge waves. The figure gradually floated up from the lava pool. Standing above the pool, the lava under his feet instantly cooled and turned into black stones. Lanka, I don't like people messing around in my territory. Shane Khazrafa looked at the newcomer with dissatisfaction. Messing around? You're saying I'm messing around? I'm an honored guest you've invited. This demon named Lanka was almost the same size as a standard human. However, his skin was pale, and there was a pair of demon horns on his head. Shane Khazrafa was very unhappy with Lanka's provocation. Don't forget where this is, and don't forget who I am. Of course I remember, Lord Khazrafa. Ranko's tone was filled with obvious disdain, completely provoking Shane Khazrafa. However, Lanka suddenly saw that half of Shane Khazrafa's left arm was gone. Hey, Khazrafa, you're actually injured. I'm very curious who broke your arm. With your injury, you won't be able to recover in less than 10 years. Shane's face darkened. It has nothing to do with you. If you think you can do whatever you want in front of me just because I'm injured, you're gravely mistaken. Due to the injury to his arm, his strength had decreased. However, this was his main battlefield after all. He was not afraid of any enemy, even if it was his old enemy, Ice Calamity Lanku. Suddenly, a huge shadow appeared above the two greater demon overlords. Lunka and Shane Kaslifar both looked up and saw a huge black monster with a lion's head and a bird's body. This monster was hundreds of times bigger than Shane Kaslifar. Anfanelli. The two demons revealed a look of fear. The huge monster called Anfanelli landed at the edge of the crater. Kiki. Kazrafa, what happened to your broken arm? Anfanelli let out a strange laugh. Shane Kazrafa's expression was very ugly. It seemed like the first thing everyone did when they arrived was laugh at his broken arm. After that, the greater devil overlords from various places appeared one after another. There were more than 30 of them, and they were all terrifying existences. The first thing these 30 greater demon overlords did was laugh at Shane Kazrafa's broken arm. Kazrafa, did you sacrifice your arm to Lord Alpha? Haha. Nicolo, you actually know how to joke. Enough. I didn't call you here today to make fun of me. Shane Kazrafa roared. Isn't that so? I called you here today because of Lord Alpha's order. Shane Kazrafa took out a crimson token. All the greater demon overlords instantly shut up. A trace of respect appeared in their eyes. They were all Demon King Alpha's vassals. Does anyone else have any objections? Lord Alpha ordered us to go to Obsidian City, Shane Kazrafa said calmly. Not any of you, but all of us. Obsidian City? That Beelzebub Sophie? There's also his wife, Iris. Lord Alpha has ordered that the couple is not allowed to continue living. He's His Majesty Beelzebub's direct subordinate. If so many of us go together, won't we anger His Majesty? Humph. His Majesty Beelzebub is supreme, but why would he care about such a small matter? Of course, although Shane Kazrafa said it was a small matter, everyone knew that it wasn't. But they all knew that it wasn't a small matter. They all knew the entanglement within. It wasn't that Demon King Beelzebub didn't care about such a small matter. It was just that it wasn't convenient for him to intervene. But it didn't mean that he couldn't do anything. They were Alpha's vassals. But compared to Beelzebub, Alpha and Beelzebub were completely different. Beelzebub was the supreme great demon king, and Alpha was only a secondary demon king. It seemed like they were only one level apart. But this one level was a gap that could never be made up for. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, there was once when more than 50 secondary demon kings tried to overthrow a great demon king. And the target that they thought could be overthrown was great demon king Beelzebub. More than 50 secondary demon kings and thousands of greater demon overlords gathered an innumerable demon army. Then, great demon king Beelzebub appeared. With just one move, he swallowed all the secondary demon kings and all the greater demon overlords, as well as half of the demon army. That was also the only time that the secondary demon kings in hell were replaced on a large scale. At the same time, it made the other demons understand how big the difference between a secondary demon king and a great demon king was. In hell, no demon dared to disrespect a great demon king. Even a secondary demon king would tremble in fear when facing a great demon king. The dignity of a great demon king wouldn't allow any low-ranked demon to offend him. Who's not here? Just then, Lang Kus suddenly looked into the distance. An unfamiliar aura. Is it Lord Alpha's new vassal? You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.